Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever in the world you may be. We have united at the virtual crossroads of America, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. This is Mark Janes, voice of the 500, wishing all the best to the talented field assembled on this famed 2.5-mile oval. Welcome to the greatest spectacle in sim racing, the ninth running of the Richmar Florist Indianapolis 500, presented by Open Wheel Racing Jobs.
The boldest and most daring sim drivers in the world are ready for today's 10th running of the Richmar Florist Indianapolis 500, presented by Open Wheel Racing Jobs. Some of the best from the Mega Driver 86 INDYCAR Series will battle it out with some of the best from the INDYCAR world. Names like your defending champion in today's Khosla, joined in the front row by Frankenfield and Franzoni. Names like Enerson, Karam, and Askew are getting strapped into the machines, ready for the 500 miles that lie ahead. 3 former champions, 24 drivers from the United States, 6 from Brazil, England, Ireland, and Switzerland are all represented in today's field. 11 rookies will head into turn 1 for the very first time. 500 miles lie ahead, 800 turns, 33 drivers, all with one goal in mind: to become the champions of the 10th running of the Richmar Florist Indianapolis 500. Let's go trackside for today's opening ceremonies.
Back in 2018, Elite Racing League owner Chad Frankenfield made the call to move his console racing series over to the PC and onto iRacing. And one of the major events he had to headline that move was the first running of the Indianapolis 500. And here we are, 10 races later, getting ready to line up for that special 10th running of the Richmar Florist Indianapolis 500. My name is Khosla here in the booth. I will be joined by Derek Vance and Tony Donahue in just a moment. We have Dave Huckleberry running from race control and taking care of things on the ground for us as well. We've got a huge production ready for you folks tonight, and we cannot wait to bring you all the incredible action that's going to be taking place here. It's crazy to think that we're already at our 10th Indianapolis 500 here in the Elite Racing Leagues. What an amazing history this event already has, and hopefully we're getting ready to write another exciting chapter. I'm first going to start by bringing in Derek Vance. Derek, we've worked together throughout this season. We've had an incredible season building up to this point, and we have the unique ability to talk about the Indy 500 as the penultimate round of this. So talking championship, talking also this race, what are you expecting to see here? Of course, there have been 2 drivers that have headlined the majority of this season. What do you think we'll see from them today?
Yeah, first and foremost, Rish, thank you for bringing me on to this broadcast, help broadcast with Tony D, this monumental race. This is my first Indianapolis 500 up in the booth, so a little butterflies. But yes, it has been a interesting season to say the least. For the most part, as you talked about, there has been 2 dominant drivers, both Joshua Chen and Piriano, or Pinero, excuse me. So it's going to be interesting to see the mix of IndyCar drivers, real life IndyCar drivers, and sim drivers taking it to this 2.5-mile oval here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
Yeah, there you see the championship standings heading into this event. Probably not too many drivers with that on their mind, but with this being a double points event for Adriano Pinheiro, his eye is on the number 107. If he is 107 points clear of Joshua Chin or Alex Van de Sant at the end of the night tonight, he will be crowned the the champion of the Mega Driver 86 INDYCAR Series for the first time in his career. So just a little extra something for him to pay attention to. Of course, for him, he's going to have to drive up through the field to get there, and we'll get to the starting grid in just a moment. But let's talk Indy 500 and what we've seen in the past event, and of course, heading into this one, Robert Maleska III. So as warm-ups are just finishing up here on track, Robert Maleska won the Indianapolis 500, the 9th running, just last season, so earlier this year in May. And he put his car on pole position for this event here today. So already tons of pace, tons of performance that we're seeing there from Robert, expecting him to be running up front, but so many major names in this field, as well as a couple of professionals, guys who have actually driven Indy cars and these versions of Indy cars around the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, like R.C. Anderson, like Oliver Askew, like Sage Karam. So what do you think we're going to see from those pros as they take on some of the best that the sim racing world has to offer?
Yeah, it is going to be interesting to see what the pros, as you say, can bring to this, that have actually been, not only in sim situations, but real life behind the wheel of an Indy car at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. So it is going to be interesting to see, and then something else too. I noticed in the opening, Rish, you're going to have a handful, if not more, of rookies taking their first turn into turn number 1, wide open at 230 miles an hour or more. So I think that's going to be something interesting and to keep your eye on when the green flag drops.
And that's a great point. You bring up turn 1 and turn 3, possibly to a lesser extent, depending on the way the wind is blowing on the day. But Derek, I know over the course of the season, we've chronicled some of your sim racing journey. Have you yet gotten a chance to drive some variation of an Indy car here at Indianapolis?
I have not gotten into the iRacing League. That is something that I am looking into, and probably going to have to do some upgrades in the PC realm to do that. But I do have my own rig put together by a coworker and myself here in my office in Project Cars 3, believe it or not, for people that are into Xbox One like me. They actually have not only the Dallara, the 2019, I believe, model of the Dallara, but they also have IMS there as well. They have the oval and the road course. So I have taken a lot of laps, so to say, in practice and in racing. So I do know what the competitors are looking into today.
Absolutely. Well, Project Cars is where the Elite Racing Leagues began before we made this move over to iRacing, before we made the move over to PC. And actually was where I took my first laps at the Indianapolis 500. So not a bad place to start at all. And I'm sure many of these drivers, if we asked them, would tell you they had very similar starts. We are going to go down trackside to begin pre-race ceremonies, and we're going to hand it over to Dustin Dewar, who's going to lead us through the songs God Bless America, the national anthem, and then, of course, traditionally, Back Home Again in Indiana. So take it away, Dusty.
To all of our brave servicemen and servicewomen, past, current, and future, and to those that didn't make it home, thank you. You are true American heroes. If tomorrow all the things were gone I worked for all my life, and I'd have to start again with just my children and my wife, I thank my lucky stars to be living here today, 'cause the flag still stands for freedom, and they can't take that away. And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. From the lakes of Minnesota to the hills of Tennessee, across the plains of Texas, from sea to shining sea, from Detroit down to Houston and New York to LA. Well, there's pride in every American heart, and it's time we stand and say, hey. And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I'll gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA.
Ladies and gentlemen, we ask you at this time to please rise, remove your hats, and face the American flag, while Do Good's recording artist, Dustin Dragon Doer, sings the national anthem.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? Back home again in Indiana, and it seems that I can see the gleaming candlelight still shining bright through these sycamores for me. The new mown hay sends of its fragrance from the fields I used to roam. When I dream about the moonlight on the Wabash, then I long for my Indiana.
Alrighty, thanks so much to Dustin Doer. Some serious vocal chops there going through all three of those videos for us. But of course, appreciate his efforts and commitment, and always one of the special parts of this event in those pre-race ceremonies, getting those complete on time. I do believe we have Tony Donahue with us now. We have a few minutes. Tony, want to bring you in and hear your thoughts on the event. What are you looking forward to seeing here? Should be an exciting one for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you just look at the first three rows here and just how close they were, 0.6 of a second that separates them. You've got some good drivers that are starting kind of mid-pack. You know, we're going to talk about these guys that have the real life experience, the R.C. Enersons of the world, Peter Dempsey. Oliver Askew rolls off in row number 7. A guy like Jared Rexing there starting 20th. We know he has the speed. He kind of has a history of not qualifying too well, but he's always there towards the end when needed. A guy like Victor Del Porto comes to mind there too in row 8. Sage Karam starting towards the back of the field as well. So a pretty stacked field here for this one, and I honestly think it's going to, you got to get to the end. Everybody talks about it. You got to get to those last 50 or so miles. But can anybody slow down this front row? You've got so much experience, wins in this race. Can anybody catch? As they've shown this week throughout practice and throughout qualifying that there's certainly the 3 cars to beat.
For sure. Hugely impressive field here today, and it took a lot of talent and skill to get into this with how many cars attempted to qualify. Usually looking at numbers well over 50 cars, trying to narrow that down to, of course, the 33 who take the green flag here in just a moment's time. So very much looking forward to that. Very happy to have you in the booth with us as well for tonight's event, Tony. This is going to be such a fantastic race here. I'm actually not too familiar with how these cars have been racing through practice or anything like that, but hopefully we're getting to see, this package continues to be refined year after year, season after season, and even within iRacing, they have different updates, and we're always paying attention to the racing, how these cars really work around each other, whether you can make overtakes without it being potentially too easy. You don't want to get back to maybe 5 or 6 years ago where the cars were it was 50 overtakes a lap, but it wasn't really the type of racing that you'd expect. You want to see overtakes, but you want to see drivers really having to work for them. So something we'll keep an eye out for, I'm sure, when we get down to it. And the cars should be rolling off in just a moment. Have a couple of minutes here before we'll have the command.
Yeah, and I think, really something to watch here is when do these yellow flags come out? Those first couple of stints, usually 28 to 32 laps in if it stays green. When do those yellows fall? And can you move up towards the field if you're somebody like Chris Wright, who's starting 15th? Jared Rexing 20th, as I've already mentioned, Victor Del Porto. Can you short pit or stretch that fuel mileage if it does stay green to be able to move yourself up and gain that track position early?
Absolutely. And with that, we are going to head down trackside now for the final part of our opening ceremonies, as we'll hand it off to Grand Marshal Mario Andretti for those most famous words in all of motorsports.
Thank you for tuning in for the Elite Indy 500. Gentlemen, start your engines.
How cool was that? To have Mario Andretti out there giving the call for the engines to start. And so in just a moment's notice, should get those drivers revving them up, and we'll get underway here.
Tony, before we get things started, I know before you stepped in, we were talking offline. Do you think this is going to be the race where Adriano Pinero, who has been so dominant all season long, is this going to be his race to wrap up the title, or is there somebody else, as you've been talking about in practice sessions and such, that's going to just have a better car than him today?
Guys like Musselman, DeGroot are always going to be there. Henry Bennett has the experience and has won this race before. I think Pinheiro is probably the guy to shoot for. Franzoni's been there too, but I do like Van de Sande. He always runs good whenever I'm in the booth. So I think those two are going to be running next to each other all evening.
Henry Bennett moving to just an Indy 500 only schedule after 2 championships, winning those back-to-back, and of course winning 2 Indianapolis 500s on top of that. So most successful driver that we have here in the field, and missed out on it last season, but man, he's always competitive, and you can absolutely never count him out. And he's got an easy car to spot. We've always complained about driver numbers sometimes not being easy to see, but you just look for that dark green car, and that's always going to be Henry Bennett that you see there in the center of your screen as the cars begin to roll. And Tony and Derek, why don't you guys walk us through row by row this starting grid?
Yeah, Derek, I'll start with the last couple of rows here. Squeaking in row 11, Shane Coogan, Seth Eggert, and Alexander Ragon. A couple other guys in the back. Tate Lytle starts from the 28th position. Presley Sora, 29th as well. You go to row number 9 there, and we see Sage Karam, Charles Teed, and Blaze Andrich. So those back rows, those are going to be some of the guys we're looking for to have speed and take some of those chances here early in this one.
Yeah, they absolutely are. And Tony, I know you have the starting grid. I don't have it quite in front of me. So let's run down the rest of the grid for us.
Yeah, Victor Del Porto starts from row number 8. Eric Macedo rolls off from the 23rd position. Jari Brubaker is 22nd. Going up to row number 7. An interesting row we'll keep an eye on here. Oliver Askew at 227.198 starts 19th, and Jared Rexing 20th, and Kevin Burrell 21st. R.C. Anderson, Scott Crump, and Peter Dempsey round out row number 6. Masai Weeks, Tyler Fody, and Chris Wright roll off from the row number 5. Eric Toriano, Nicholas Sudik, and Mark Murphy. Row number 4, top 9, A.J. Musselman, Nick DeGroot, and Chris Wilhite. Row 2, Adriana Pinheiro, Alexander Van de Sant, and Henry Bennett. You got some winners in that row as well. And then Malechka, Frankenfield, and Franzoni, your row number 1 starters. The pole speed, 227.912. 5 elite racing champions, equaling 17 total. 3 former 500 winners in this field. 24 drivers from the United States. 6 hail from Brazil, 1 from England, 1 from Ireland, and 1 from Switzerland. And Derek and Rich, one key to look at here, 33% of the field, or 11 drivers, are rookies in this Indianapolis 500. So I'm inside the numbers as well. We average about 10 liters per race, 39 lead changes per race. But here's the big one to watch out for. 91% of these races over the 9 runnings have been run under the green flag.
Tony, you touched on the 11 rookies that are going to be making, obviously, their first start here in just a few minutes. I know you have an extensive background when it comes to this track. Can you walk through, for everybody, what's going through the mind of those 11 rookies just before the green flag drops and they're wide open, 230-plus miles an hour ducking down into turn 1?
Yeah, I mean, we see it in the real deal, but here you just don't want to make a mistake, and you don't want to be that rookie that everybody starts pointing the finger to. Oh, he pinched me too low, or he got me out of the groove and ruined my day. The key to being a rookie here is, 1, to finish 500 miles. If you got a chance at the end to go for it, go for it. But you got to give yourself that chance towards the end when you're there. So you want to just settle into a rhythm. This is a rhythm race. I mean, it's a rhythm race. It's a timing race. You can't. Everybody says this. You can't win it in lap 1, but you can certainly lose it. So you just want to make sure that you don't want to make any mistakes. Don't get caught up in anybody else's mistake, and just smoothly sail your way into a rhythm here early on in this race.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think you definitely hit the nail on the head. And if we were going to make some predictions here right before this green flag drops, Tony, who would you be putting money on?
Well, I know Chad wants me to pick him starting in the 2nd position, but Adriana Pinheiro, Alexander Van de Sant, and Nick DeGroot are 3 drivers that I'm always looking out for. Those are drivers that know how to get to the end. They know how to adjust their cars over 500 miles. They know how to hit their marks on their in and their out laps. They know how to take those calculated risks when needed. If you want to go back in the field a little bit, watch out for Jared Rexing. Starts in the middle of row number 7. A little bit of a disappointing qualifying effort there by Rexing, starting 20th. But this is a guy that knows how to methodically work his way up to the field. Rish and I saw it a lot last year. We would say, hey, he's starting in the teens, and next thing you know, towards the end of the race, he's found himself running up front.
Yeah, definitely some good choices there if you are looking to keep your eye on somebody in this next 200 laps or so. I'm looking at obviously you touched on Adriano Pinheiro, definitely for sure the dominance that he has had in this season this year so far, and then also too I'm going to be a little bit biased here. R.C. Enerson, I know he's going to be on the Push to Pass podcast as a weekly contributor here next season, so I have to definitely look out for him. And then also too someone that Tony, I know you're quite familiar with, starting in P19, but Oliver Askew, looking for him to have a solid race as well.
Yeah, and you think about these guys that have the experience inside of a real Indy car. And it just shows you, a lot of people log in tonight into this Elite Racing Network and the Mega Driver 86 series, and you think, oh, well, you're just hopping on and anybody can do this. No, not everybody can do this. This is challenging. One small mistake, your focus gets shifted elsewhere, can really cost you tonight's race. So, you look back in the field, it shows you how good these guys are when Dempsey and Enerson and Askew and Sage Karam are starting towards the back of the field. And Derek, what we really even haven't talked about so far is there's been a lot of drivers and a lot of well-named drivers that didn't make tonight's race.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Great points there indeed. While we wait for the warm-up laps to conclude, Tony, for somebody, as you touched on, that may be tuning in possibly for the first time, I know you basically have this in your blood, but talk a little bit about the pageantry that is not only IMS, but the Indianapolis 500.
Well, I mean, anybody who's been there kind of knows, and once that bug hits you, you've been bit for the rest of your life. These drivers right now in this warm-up lap, as we get ready to file those 11 rows of 3, there's a lot of nerves. But once that green flag flies and you can settle in, the quicker you can do that, we see it in the real Indy 500, we'll see it here today. The quicker that you can kind of settle into a rhythm, settle into a pace, and don't let other drivers around you dictate what you're going to do with your race car, the better. But this will be a chaotic first lap. We'll see if it can get spread out. But heading into turn 1 is going to be crazy. We should see a lot of give and take. Look, this is a very experienced front row. It's a very experienced second row. So I expect a lot of give and take here early on to settle into that rhythm. But yeah, 11 rows of 3 coming down on the green flag at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. No greater place in the world.
And you talked about the experience in the front row, and I'm going to point out here specifically Chad Frankenfield. Believe it or not, he is starting his 9th Indianapolis 500, if you can believe that.
And you see it right here on the green, the initial green flag. The entire front row goes single file. Let's just settle in, save some fuel here early on, and take it down into turn number 1. So a clean start through the first 9-10 positions as they go single file on lap 1. A little bit more chaotic towards the back here, and we know, Derek, coming off of 1 into 2 can always be tough. As we see the first move being made here as Chad Frankenfield says, hey, I'm going to the lead in that Danny Sullivan late 80s scheme. I want to lead this first lap.
Yeah, absolutely good, clean pass there by Frankenfield as he takes the top spot. Glad to see, Tony, that all 11 rookies made it through turn 1 unscathed.
Yeah, now it's settling into a rhythm, and we'll see if the leaders decide to flip-flop that lead back and forth. You're going to save some fuel here. 1 extra lap on this stint plus 1 extra lap on the next 4 or 5 stints could really go a long way to if this does become a fuel mileage race, which, Derek, 91% of the laps have been running a green, as I mentioned. That's a fuel mileage race almost every time. So single file throughout the pack here, some battling going about mid-pack, but everybody kind of settling into a rhythm. And as you mentioned, those rookies doing a great job of kind of holding their own, but staying out of what could be danger. And we'll see it here. There's give and take right now, right? Somebody makes that late move going into 3, that late move going into 1. Somebody kind of pinches you off. You're a little bit more liable right now to let go of that throttle a little bit, let that person complete the pass in front of you, or make that late move and have some patience, because that's what it's all about here the first 50 or so laps. It's just patience.
Yeah, absolutely, and that patience obviously will pay off for somebody here at about lap 200. But I think you're absolutely right. Depending on the data that you just mentioned there about fuel and such, it's going to be interesting to see how many different cars, how many different strategies we have as this plays out.
Yeah, and that's exactly it too. And if the leaders get off of a strategy where they've got to kind of change things up, and they feel like the rest of the field is catching up to them, we'll see how they adjust. I mean, you think about some of the experience here. Henry Bennett, who's up front right now, Victor Del Porto with 27 top 5s. We talked about a guy like Van de Sant, Pinheiro, Frankenfield. These guys have a massive amount, 20 or so and more top 5s. These are guys that just know, hey, right now, I'm just finding out what my car is going to give me. How much has it changed with this new set of tires after qualifying? How much is it different in turbulent air? How much is it compared to the elements that we've had this week in practice? So a great job here by the leaders to settle in as the lead is swapped back to the pole sitter, and Chad Frankenfield files back to the second position.
Yeah, Chad, the success that he has had, this being his ninth start, he is seeking his first win. Definitely going to be seeing if he can pull that off today. But you do have previous winners up there in the top five: Henry Bennett and Robert Melchelsky. I believe that's how that's pronounced as well.
Yeah, he's got that almost looking like the Ericsson ride as he heads into turn 3 and takes the lead back. And this is normal if you're just watching. This is kind of normal. A little back and forth with the lead swap. Both of these drivers probably know when that's coming, when you have to run. You're not going to be battled for it. If Frankenfield wants to look into turn 1 here, he's probably not going to be battled for that lead as he looks to the inside here. And this is an opportunity for both drivers right now to kind of let off the throttle heading into the corner, give up that position, and start saving that fuel because, again, 91% of green flag laps. I mean, that is an astronomical amount of green flag laps, and that really plays into the fuel strategy card.
Yeah, it absolutely does. Like I said, a lot of these guys, as you mentioned, are going to settle in, get a little bit comfortable, not very racy, and they're not going to show their hand right away. I would say, Tony, probably lap 185, 190 is when we're going to start seeing drivers start to show their hand.
Yeah, and, look, a guy like Malechka who knows what's going on up towards the front right now. Him and Frankenfield have been riding these races, driving them together for so long. They know that you got to get to the end. It's great to be out in front of the lead right now, but so many different things can change. You go back to last year's Indianapolis 500 and a guy like Scott Dixon who, dominated that race and led, 100, I think it was 98 or so laps and was in the lead on that last pit stop. And one small mistake going over that pit road speed limiter can really make things a total hassle for you. So you got to be perfect. And everybody talks about being perfect. You can maybe allow for a little bit of a gap here early in the race to where if something is a mistake, you got a chance to come back from it. But you certainly don't want to be making those mistakes late in the going.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And you talk about, late in the race. I remember a few years ago, maybe a little bit longer, but you think about J.R. Hildebrand coming off of turn 4 and putting it into the wall. He would have picked up his first Indianapolis 500 win if it wasn't for putting his machine into the wall there coming out of turn 4.
Yeah, and you're relying on the track conditions as Frankenfield backs up towards the front. And we'll see if lap traffic becomes a factor here. That's something to look at. So there's been a lot of swapping throughout the top 10 here. Yari Brubaker back there in 15th. He's up 7 spots from his 22nd starting position. He's kind of found his rhythm, taking advantage of the opportunity. He had a couple rookies starting in front of him. R.C. Enerson up to 13th. Peter Dempsey has moved up 4 spots. He finds himself 14th. Sage Karam started 25th. He's up 7 positions. He's currently into the 18th spot. So Sage Karam on the money here early, as well as Peter Dempsey, R.C. Enerson, and Yari Brubaker making some moves up towards the front. And then one of those guys that we talked about, Derek, is a guy in Alex Van de Sande. He knows that he's got a good car as he just swaps back from 3rd to 4th. But he's a driver that knows to get up towards the front and stay up there. And we've gotten, as he gets a little wide here, you don't want to see that because that safer barrier will creep up on you. But we've grown used to seeing that purple and white livery up towards the front.
Yeah, we absolutely have, and I know you have a passion for liveries. So I know as we go along here, you're going to compare one of the liveries you see on track today to a past livery that you've seen in IndyCar or CART as well.
Yeah, Chad Frankenfield does a good job. He had a Billy Vukovic livery last year. Now he's running that what looks like the Miller High Life scheme up towards the front. The 1989, I believe the 1988 scheme, if I'm not mistaken, and he's hoping that he can be as dominant as Danny Sullivan was on that day. But as we know, Danny Sullivan leading in that race found the wall. So, you go back through the field and you look at some of these liveries. Troiano always brings it when it comes to his livery. And as we know, we'll see a lot of different ones throughout this Richmar Florist Indianapolis 500 over the next several hundred miles as these drivers settle in, and Frankenfield finds himself out to a half-second lead.
Yeah, as we clock lap by lap here, lap 12, Frankenfield, who is seeking his first Indianapolis 500 win is out on point, but you do have, like you mentioned, a lot of veterans and a lot of drivers with experience scattered throughout the field that are slowly picking their way one by one to try to get that top spot, which, like I said, is held currently by Chad Frankenfield.
Yeah, and look, what we haven't talked about too is there is a luck factor in this. You got to be able to put yourself in the right position, but there is a level of luck factor here, and sometimes that luck has been bad for Chad Frankenfield. I mean, this is the illustrious race. It's been snake bitten by, and sometimes you get caught up in somebody else's mess. So sometimes, and especially in this race, there's going to be a point where it's almost better to be lucky than good. If not mistaken here, if we can check in, one of our front row starters, if I can pull this up, Franzoni has moved towards the back of the field. I don't know if we can get an update on what's going on with Franzoni, but I believe he started in the third position and finds himself outside of the top 30. So we might be able to check in and see what's going on with that machine. He is outside of the top 30.
Yeah, hopefully we can get an update on that. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Rodrigo has fallen off of the pace drastically here within the first 14 laps of this race.
Yeah, so again, you don't want to have bad luck here early. Sometimes that happens. You never want to see it, but especially when you have a fast car like we know that he had after qualifying from the third position.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So hopefully we'll be able to get an update here as soon as possible with the pit reporters as to the issues that Rodrigo may be having early in this race.
But just like that, Derek, as we talked about, we're coming up to lap 15. You're about halfway through the stint. What adjustments are you making on your? You can reach up and adjust some of the weight jacker, move the swagger back and forth on this car. But as that fuel burns off, that car becomes a lot lighter, and you're going to have to make the adjustments to that to be able to last another probably 15 to 17 laps, I would say, on this first stint of the race.
And then something else, too, I think the drivers and crew chiefs are going to have to keep in mind, Tony, is we have a spin down in turn one.
We do have a spin. Is that Rexing? Jared Rexing, I believe. That is the 10 car, the Nesquik livery, to bring out our first caution. So you're halfway through the stint here, Derek, for the first yellow in this race. We'll see. I as we go to the Whiskey Cask replay here, I think you'll see the field kind of split. I think if you're the leaders, you stay out front. But I think if you're about 12 to 13th on back, you say, all right, we're going to bring it in now and have an opportunity to pit under yellow. Rexing running all by himself into turn one. Maybe catches a little bit of dirty air, a little high off the exit, brushes what we talked about earlier, brushes the wall, and that's hard contact. That is hard face-first contact into the inside wall. Great job by Rexing for keeping it off the track, but that's going to that's really going to put a damper on his day.
Yeah, it absolutely is. It drops him 13 positions to 33rd. And, as you said, it was a good job by Rexing here as we're on board as he hits the outside retaining wall, shoots back down into the inside, and, keeps it off the track so it doesn't collect any of the other racers.
Yep, so the first yellow comes out. We want to thank a lot of our series sponsors throughout today's race. At Mega Driver 86 on Twitter provides top-notch NASCAR content from past to present. Mega Driver 86 also provides content from INDYCAR to Supercars. Make sure you give him a follow at Mega Driver. Also want to thank some of our premier partners. That includes TA Services. For over 36 years, TA Services has been a trusted domestic and international full-service third-party logistics provider offering freight brokerage, managed transportation, warehousing, and fulfillment, a cross-border logistics service to shippers around the globe. TA Services moves what matters to you. Let the TA Services team make ship happen for you. So the first caution of the afternoon comes out, and we will see a lot of these drivers come into the pit road, and a couple of drivers like Preston Sora. Looks like Oliver Askew has elected to stay out as well. And we see the dice rolling here early, and it looks like Malechka will be pushed back. I think he was leading heading in, but Chad Frankenfield will get off pit road first. Malechka second. It looks like Van de Sant will get off third, which means they'll be third, fourth, and fifth in line because Sora and Oliver Askew have elected to stay out and kind of start that strategy play here early on in this one.
Yeah, I was watching the leaderboard there, all of the cars coming in, and I was watching Soren and Oliver Askew go up the board, and I'm just thinking to myself, I wonder, A, if they're on the same strategy, and B, if they are, is this strategy going to pay off for them? And as you said, an early roll of the dice for both of those with just 17 laps complete.
Yeah, and I think you're looking at one of those things of, okay, you know, I'm Oliver Askew running 17th. I know I got a fast car, and I know that I can keep pace with the leaders. I just need that track position. So if he can extend this for another 20, 25 laps, let's say he can get to about lap 35, 36, 37, that'd be 20 laps. Maybe you get another yellow, and that kind of cycles you, keeps you up towards the front. So some of the strategy calls happening already. So Frankenfield comes out. He is third. Malechka is fourth. Van de Sant fifth, Pinheiro, Musselman, DeGroot, Wilhite, and Bennett. Bennett, with plenty of experience in this race, a former winner, finds himself currently just inside of the top 10. Eric Troiano is 11th with Mark Murphy rolling off from the from the 12th position when we come up on this restart. So Sora, who started 28th, finds himself in the lead. Oliver Askew, who started 17th, finds himself now second.
Yeah, definitely a roll of the dice by both of those drivers. Going to be interesting to see as this race unfolds or later in this race to see if those strategies pay off, or if the cars that pitted, majority of cars that pitted, overtake both of those fairly easily.
And I don't know if we have anything on, I think we talked about this, possibly finding what exactly happened to one of our front row starters in Franzoni, who is back to the 28th position.
Update on Franzoni here, guys. He actually didn't make the grid, so had to start from pit road. So he is out on the racetrack, still on the lead lap, but obviously lost all that track position.
Sometimes that Wi-Fi doesn't cooperate, correct?
Oh God, never.
We also want to thank Blue Egg Marketing. Some phrases. Blue Egg Marketing, the marketing department for small businesses. I'm Ron Burgundy. Check them out today. Small business owners, Blue Egg is your biggest fan. They will help businesses punch above their weight class. Check out Blue Egg Marketing today. We thank them so much for their support here of today's 10th running of the Rich Mar Florist Indianapolis 500, presented by Open Wheel Jobs.
Yeah, definitely thank Tony, as you said, all of the sponsors that make this possible for this race and all season, to be quite honest, to be presented to everyone out there on YouTube and whatever streaming platform you're watching this on.
Derek Vance, I'm Tony Donahue. Rich Khosla with us as well, helping us. He's the expert on the series. Hey, Rich, real quick, if you're there, would like you, first of all, we have a Castro Neves on the grid would that I think a few fans watching out there are a little confused by. If you want to go and help us with that confusion, we would certainly appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately for those of you guys watching at home, Dudes Castroneves, no relation to Elio Castroneves, of course, the four-time Indy 500 champion. But he has shown and put in some performances that have been pretty similar to Elio. So could look for him to move forward, already up 7 on the night, running 27th right now. But he's got a long way ahead of him if he wants to get all the way to the front of this.
And shout out to Dudes. He is a Twitter follower of mine. We interact back and forth. Big fan of the INDYCAR Series and this series as well. Wanted to go back as well, guys. A great performance by Dustin Dewar on God Bless America, the national anthem. Great flyover presented as well. And then, as we all know, everybody's favorite, one of everybody's heroes in the racing world, Mario Andretti, with the incredible command here to start this one.
Yeah, definitely. That's on the bucket list of people to meet. I know, Tony, you've had the pleasure and honor of doing that. But we'll get back to Green Flag Racing, and we'll talk more about maybe Mario as this unfolds.
Yeah. So restart here. We are back under green flag conditions, and what we're going to keep an eye on here is can Sora and Askew stay up towards the front as Chad Frankenfield has moved from third back to fifth. he was jumped on the restart by Alexander Van de Sant and Malechka. So Malechka and now Frankenfield going to battle right back with Van de Sant as they head down in the one. Van de Sant will keep that spot, but Frankenfield right back on his rear, trying to use that toe and use that push down the backstretch to try to gain that position back.
Yeah, good racing as we get good hard racing as we get back under green. Soren and Askew, if you're just joining us, they're up 27 and 17 spots respectively. And how did they do it? Well, just the caution we had just a few laps ago. They were the only two that decided to stay out. Everyone else pitted in or went into the pit. So it's going to be interesting to see, as Tony pointed out, if Soren and Askew respectively are going to be able to hold off a charging rest of the field coming in one.
Entire field here, about 15 back, goes single files. We do see a move there inside of what it looked like to be the top five. And I believe, if not mistaken, that was DeGroot and Musselman battling, and Adriano Pinheiro. Pinheiro goes way high, makes the move on Frankenfield, and the guy we knew we'd be talking about, Adriano Pinheiro, finds himself back inside of the top five. And it's getting stacked up there as we get to lap number 23 here. But yeah, back up front, still Presley, Sora, Oliver, Askew leading the way. Malechka, Van de Sant, Pinheiro, your top five. Frankenfield has fallen back. Musselman, DeGroot, Wilhite, and Bennett rounding out your top your top 10 runners here as we are 23 laps into the Richmar Florist Indianapolis 500, part of the Mega Driver 86 INDYCAR Series.
Talking about Adriano Pinheiro, who has been, as we've well documented, dominant this season. He is not only seeking his fourth win this year, Tony, but he is also seeking that illustrious first win here at the Indianapolis 500, as he is in the top five currently, P5.
Yeah, and Pinheiro running that high line. Frankenfield's trying to maybe get around him. I don't think Frankenfield wants to be too far behind him, but look, Pinheiro running that major high line. We don't see that often. Frankenfield now closes in. I think if you're Chad Frankenfield, you're inside the cockpit of that car right now. You're going, man, I don't like you running that high side. You might get caught up in the marbles and collect me with you. So we'll see what Frankenfield does here, the veteran in that Danny Sullivan Miller High Life looking at number 16 car. But again, Pinheiro, this is a guy, we've seen him in all racetracks, and Rich can tell you this as well. He's aggressive, and he'll try different lines if it means making his car better, even if it does mean going up to that high side.
Absolutely, and there is actually historical precedence for that line. We've seen it in past iRacing Indy 500s. I wasn't sure if it was going to still exist with the latest package and everything, but you probably have to go back to, I think, 3 or 4 seasons ago when just about everybody running at the front of the field was running that kind of very squared off line. For some reason, that works for these guys in terms of just getting better lap time or potentially better tire wear out of these cars.
So Frankenfield looks to the inside to try to grab that fourth position back. Pinheiro with that high line into 3 shuts the door, and they will be nose to tail down the front straightaway here, heading into turn number 1. This is the best battle so far on the track as we look at it right now after this restart. But Sora and Askew holding their own. They're probably within that pit window, probably 7 to 8 more laps before we see them head down pit road. But Frankenfield with his hands full trying to get around Adriano Pinheiro.
Yeah, he definitely has his hands full, so to say. And so far, you just talked about Soren and Askew probably going to hit their pit window here relatively soon. I have to say I'm impressed with their ability to hold off all of the cars behind them that pitted about 10 or so laps ago.
Yeah, there's Askew in second. He's got a pretty good cushion there over Malechka, too, who is running in third. And I'm sure Askew's going, all right, this guy's on the same strategy as me. Maybe I will pit about, I would assume Askew will pit a lap after Sora, because Sora's going to be cutting that win in that draft with clean air. And yes, to those listening and maybe tuning in for the first time, that plays in here to the iRacing. This is every little detail that iRacing and everybody puts into this sim league is down to the T on what really happens on a race day at the Indianapolis 500. As we look back at Chad Frankenfield there, still currently in the 6th position with Pinheiro in front of him. We got a battle a little bit back into the top 10. I believe that is that Nick DeGroot making the pass there as these drivers going side by side. Del Porto's right there as well, so a little bit farther back in the field here in that late 80s, early 90s Mac Tools looking livery right there. Maybe that's a shout out to the Union Jack, Jim Crawford.
I was wondering when you were going to make that reference there to the Mac Tools livery. I was just waiting for it.
I think what goes into this, and what really goes into IndyCar as well, some of these liveries that really stand out. Arrow McLaren SP does a great job of some louder liveries, some off the rails, a little bit different color schemes, and that really pops and that really draws in that casual fan, right? Draws in that casual fan that may not know the personality of the drivers, but the first thing they see is them strapped into their cars, and they say, "That's a pretty good-looking race car. I'm going to go ahead and cheer for that driver."
Yeah, I know, Tony, at Burnout Sports, I know you did something earlier in the year, maybe around September. I know you had a poll on the best livery in 2022. But I think something I've thought about that I know NASCAR does, where they have their throwback weekend. I wonder if IndyCar could incorporate that in one of the race weekends where you have a throwback weekend to maybe, the old liveries from IndyCar of the mid-'90s and maybe even kart as well.
Yeah, and I think, if Gateway were to be moved to Saturday night, I know it's back on a Sunday afternoon for the 2023 schedule, but maybe you do a Gateway Saturday night event where you have that. I think that would be really cool, and you would hope that everybody would take part and really take advantage of that opportunity. And then on the flip side of that, NASCAR and these drivers have done a really good job of cars that make sense, right? Like cars, this is my hero, or this is what the 2-car used to look like. Or, hey, my sponsor, such and such, used to run this livery. Or my dad and Bobby Rahal. Or my dad and, I know Marco is not involved full-time anymore. But some of these drivers that maybe could really take advantage of, imagination and creativity for some of these liveries throughout IndyCar as well. Sage Karam finds himself inside of the top 15. Let's look at some of these drivers that have real-world experience, so to speak. We start with Oliver Askew. He's currently in the second spot, up 17. Again, we expect him to pit here shortly. He is still yet to make his first pit stop, along with Presley Sora, as right on cue, Oliver Askew pulls that number 38 with him. So he'll fall back. Let's go and follow his pit stop here as Oliver Askew will make the first green flag stop of the afternoon. Everybody else has pitted under that first yellow that came out on lap 15. So he hits his marks perfectly. Does ask you 4 tires, maybe a quick adjustment, fill that thing full of fuel. And Rish, as you know, these outlaps, when everybody else is kind of blowing by you, you got to tell yourself, I've got fresher tires. I'll be able to make the move. How patient do you need to be when you've kind of gone off strategy, as Oliver Askew has?
Immensely patient. It's really rough, especially when you're so reliant on the draft, around a track like this, and the little bit of extra lap time that it does give you. Here at Indy, you can kind of get away with running on your own and not losing as much time as, we cover a lot of, NASCAR events with Daytona and Talladega. There you lose the draft, your day's basically over. But the most critical thing is, here's Oliver Askew. There's Robert Maleska. So the track's big enough that he's not going to go down a lap, and so that's not going to hurt him if a caution flies, but you kind of don't have much room for error. If you do have a bad lap or something, all of a sudden the leaders are breathing down your neck, and that becomes just a little bit tougher to start to pull away from them and try to make any advantage out of those fresher tires.
And Rish, these outlaps, key to be looking in your mirrors, that blend line down the back straightaway, cars coming at probably 10 to 15 miles an hour faster than what you're coming out of the pits. The importance of just knowing your surroundings and how that goes into iRacing here, as we see in this sim racing, how that plays a factor into it.
For sure. Each of these drivers have built in within iRacing a spotter. Some of them even have real people, real friends sitting in their boxes, watching around them, making them aware of where all these cars are on the racetrack so that they have as much possible spatial awareness as they can, while they're, of course, focused on the road ahead. But for the most part, with that blend, like you said, you're not really up to speed until probably the short shoot between 3 and 4. So all the way up, especially down that back straightaway, that's really where it's the most painful. You can come out maybe 30, 40 car lengths in front of somebody else, but they're going to catch you pretty quick, and you got to make sure that you're just ready for how that's going to blend when you hit turn 3. And then, of course, by the time you're through turn 3, you guys should be more or less even.
And I believe if we can check in the other driver that went off strategy and that was leading laps, that was Presley Sora. He's 29th, and I believe he is very close to Oliver Askew on the racetrack. Yep, so he's just in front of him as Askew pitted about a lap earlier. So it cycles everybody through the first round of pit stops here as we etch closer to that 100-mile mark. That would be lap number 40, as we're 35 laps into this. Robert Malechka back on top. Alexander Van de Sant up 4 positions, finds himself second. Adriano Pinheiro is third. Chad Frankenfield currently in the 4th position. And it's AJ Musselman, Nick DeGroot, Chris Wilhite, Henry Bennett, the former champion, Mark Murphy, and Nicholas Sudek inside of the top 10. Derek, we will start with you. As we itch this first 100 miles, Malechka's done a great job of staying patient and really finding his way back up towards the front.
Yeah, he has, along with the other drivers as well. You know, outside of the single car spin that we've had, I'm pretty impressed with all the drivers, how patient they are, settling in, as you mentioned, at the top of the race. And I think things are going to ramp up a little bit more there as we tick closer to that 200 lap mark.
Rich, we'll go to you too. Is Van de Sant here making a run? This is the guy that we know is always up towards the front. He's finding his way, now finds himself in position in second with a chance to take the lead for the first time today. As we go on board here at Alex Van de Sant, I think Rich is there. Rich, if you are, feel free to chime in. It's the guy's name that week in and week out in this Mega Driver 86 series, we're always saying Van de Sant up towards the front as he does make the move into one. That's a lead change for the first time today. Alex Van de Sant to the front of the point.
Yeah, the one car back in first position. It's been a weird season for Alex Van de Sant. Hasn't been short of success in the sense of just generally good results, but not to the standards that he set for himself as the 2-time defending series champion. But an Indy 500 win would just really be the cherry on the top there. And right now he's in obviously the best position to do that, at least at this point in the race. But he's always competitive at this racetrack, always looking strong. And how amazing would that be for him? He won the last round at Circuit Gilles Villeneuve in Montreal, kind of getting his championship back on track, maybe a little bit too late in the season. But if you could end this season with an Indy 500 win, I think you could look back on that as pretty much a success. And how incredible would that three-season stretch be? Championship, Indy 500 if he's able to pull it off.
Especially after finishing runner-up and finishing second in this race previously. As he is at the point with Malechka currently in second, Pinheiro third, Frankenfield, Musselman your top 5. And don't look too far ahead here, boys, but there is some lap traffic coming. As we talked about in this race, one of the key stats that we mentioned, 91% of these laps being ran under the green flag conditions. And Van de Sant, the leader, as we hit the 100-mile mark, lap number 40, Van de Sant, the leader, looks up and sees some cars, about 20 to 25 car lengths ahead of him, but he can certainly see them down the back straightaway. Malechka kind of settling in here saying, you know what, I'm going to save some fuel. Van de Sant, if you want to go ahead and lead this thing for a little bit, you're more than welcome to, and that's currently what he's doing.
You know, as you pointed out there, Van de Sant seeking his first Indianapolis 500 win. But I know Resh talked about, and I want to review this for people that may have missed it, the scenario that Adriano Pinheiro sees himself in with the most points, leading points in the championship, Resh. What does he have to do here as he sits third to wrap that points championship up, possibly after today?
Yeah, it's weird to talk about points when you're at the Indianapolis 500, but that's just the way the schedule's played out as the penultimate round of this season. He needs to walk away, and the magic number for him is 107. So currently sits 50 points ahead of Joshua Chin. Most critically, that this race is a double points event, and that Chin did not make the start of this race. He didn't qualify for this race, so that obviously plays pretty heavily into Pinheiro's favor. But we were just talking about Van de Sant. If something happens to the driver of the number 56 car and Van de Sant's able to get a great result, that could suddenly open up the championship for him and make that a two-way fight between Van de Sant and Pinheiro.
We continue to watch this fight up towards the front and throughout the field as Malechka back to the point takes the lead. Van de Sant goes back to second. At this point, Rich, a lot of these drivers really settling in, right? You've got that first pit stop out of the way. You know how your car will react throughout a stint as that fuel burns off. We've seen guys like Pinheiro try different higher lines. But right now, as we see a lot of single file, especially throughout the top 15 spots, this is just really settling in, getting into your rhythm and burning down those laps.
Yeah, this is the portion of the race where you're kind of starting to think things through and figure out, okay, we've had one caution so far. It was a one-car incident, so guys are racing each other clean, at least right now. There haven't been too many problems. Car seems to be handling well. Obviously, track conditions are going to change over the course of this event. Track's going to rubber up a little bit more. We could see some difference in temperatures on the surface of the racetrack. So the drivers have multiple tools at their disposal. They have their weight jacker. They have ARB adjustment. You also have, brake bias, but you probably shouldn't be using that here at Indianapolis, especially if you made the top 33. But yeah, that's kind of just what you're figuring out right now is, okay, we're here. We've just passed the 100-mile mark. We're about to pass quarter distance in this race. What is my game plan? Let's lay this out here. What's going to get me to lap 200 the fastest way possible? Some drivers have the benefit of a crew chief or a spotter, like I mentioned before, helping them run those numbers and helping them understand what's going on. But you also got to be ready to think on your feet when that inevitable caution comes at the worst possible time for your planned strategy.
Yeah, Rich, you look right now. So that first yellow came out on lap number 15. It went back to green on lap number 18 after Jared Rexing's spin. So you're already looking at about 25, 26 laps. I'm horrible at math. That's why I can never be a race engineer or a strategist. But we are looking at this second round of pit stops for some of these leaders here coming up in the next, I'd say, 5 to 8 laps.
It should be very soon that they're coming up. Yeah, I think they went back to green on lap 17, so I'd imagine by probably close to lap 50, 49 or 50 is when we'd expect to start seeing pit stops.
I know there was two cars that we talked about, Oliver Askew and Presley Saran, that went off strategy. Do you think now that they're going to stay with whatever strategy they had planned, or as the laps tick down, Tony, are they going to go in when all the rest of the cars go in here shortly?
Yeah, I think it depends on if a yellow comes before that. I think now you're kind of married to that. And the reason why those two stayed out is to hope for a longer stint at some point, whether it's stint number 2 that we're in, stint 3, stint 4, or even stint number 5, which would probably come around lap 145 to lap 60, to where maybe you're up towards the front and you're leading, as we saw that was about a 17-lap stint where they were up towards the front after not pitting. Can you stay up there and a yellow come out? Now, as what we're seeing here, staying on the lead lap. And just because they have a straightaway lead over Malechka right here doesn't mean that the next stint around there, it's going to be that close. So you also got to stay on the lead lap, which is huge as we get towards the 25% mark here and we head over to lap number 50. And a lot of times when you're out there by yourself on this strategy, as we see here, as we follow Oliver Askew, he's really not that close to tuck in behind somebody and try to save some fuel. He's got a little bit in front of him, but it seems like, and we saw it on that lap with this great view, as we see some drivers starting to dive down pit road. That's AJ Musselman, the turn 4 racing number 54. But that gap is going to continue to get closer and closer. You just got to hold on and stay on that lead lap before, Malechka and Van de Sant and these leaders find themselves coming up to lap you.
Yeah, I think that's you're spot on, and it's going to be interesting to see, as you pointed out there, Musselman coming in to the pits. If this strategy is going to pay off for him, I know he pitted last time when everyone else came in, but him coming down to pit row first, interesting to see as this plays out if that goes to his advantage.
And a big thanks to our awesome producer here, Dave Huck, doing a great job. Let's go back to lap number 33. We did have Ari Brubaker, who we were talking about, was off to a great start. He had a spin that did not bring out a yellow flag, which there was probably some drivers in the series that wanted to see that yellow flag come out. But nonetheless, that's why if you're running down the leaderboard, you see Ari towards the back. He was off to a flying start, had made a lot of positions up, But yeah, Brubaker is back to 32nd. I believe he's possibly even out of this bad boy. So Malechka, your leader on pit road, lights him up as he dives for his second pit stop here of the race.
Yeah, just seeing a little puff of smoke there coming into the pits, trying to hit that pit road speed. But I want to point out, too, last lap, Nick DeGroot just laid down a lap of under 41 seconds at 40.87.
So pit stops underway for the leaders. We see strategy playing out here. But we just know, guys, I'm not going to jinx anything, but you can play that strategy card about about pit stops and such. But you know we're going to see a late yellow here as Sage Karam is going to stay out and stretch the field. He's up to second. Chad Frankenfield, he's part of those top 5 drivers so far today. He so far is staying out and finds himself in the lead.
Yeah, we see a handful or so come in, but we see the likes of, as you said, Sage Karam, Chad Frankenfield, R.C. Enerson, etc., staying out, and then somebody else that we pointed out earlier that fell back in the field, now up to 8th, Rodrigo Frenzoni. Yeah,
and that is, he's got a fast car, and kudos to him for staying patient and working things up towards the front of the field and finding himself in a position here.
Yeah, absolutely. So we see another handful or so of cars coming down for their second stop. So we'll see how things shake out here as we're on lap 52 of 200 here at the Indianapolis 500. Very interesting race so far. Tony, clean, I would say, for the most part as well.
Yeah, outside of that yellow is Frankenfield coming off pit road. Let's follow him here and just show you the importance as a lot of the field comes by as we see Pinheiro go by, Malechka go by. Just the difficulty here of merging down on the backstretch when you've got a towering inferno, for lack of a better term, coming behind you. Frankenfield does a great job. He's a veteran driver. He knows what he needs to do. Get out, get some space, and get up to speed here as it looks like he will fall in right in front of Oliver Askew. So Askew not cycling up towards the front as we thought that he might here after he stayed out under that first pit stop. But we do have some other players up front that are now moving up as Van de Samp leads it. Malechka second. Now Pinheiro goes to third. Sora is fourth. Remember, he stayed out, so he's on a little bit of a different strategy. Troiano fifth, very consistent driver in this series. Frankenfield sixth. Askew seventh. Musselman eighth. Woolhide ninth, and Bennett running in the 10th position. Let's go on board here for a couple laps with our pole sitter, Robert Malechka.
Yeah, currently running P2 as we are on board, as you said, with Malechka. Nice, clean race, keeping his nose clean there. And I know, obviously, the ultimate goal, not only for him, but for these other drivers, is to keep it clean as long as they can and then give it all they have for the last 5 or so laps here.
See ya.
As we are on board here with Robert Malechka. Tony, as you watch this on board, anything you see driving style wise that would send up a red flag, or just smooth in and out?
Nope, super smooth, following that line in front of him, probably saving a little bit of fuel here, and just really chomping off these laps here as you get back up to speed and you get some warmth in those tires here early in this stint as Van de Samp still leads up front.
Yeah, very smooth in and out. All the drivers, for the most part, have driven a clean race, smooth in and out of the corners. We've had the one caution so far. Hopefully, we can keep it clean for the remainder of the race. Remains to be seen as we're lap 55 here, as we're ticking off one by one by one.
The laps ticking off here, 56 down. Van de Samp, Malechka. We have another car back on to pit road. And that is Eric Troiano. had found himself moving himself back into the top 5. He is with Esports by TK, as he will look to hit his marks here perfectly, and does so for his second stop here of this race. But Sora, Askew still in the top 10, so right now that strategy kind of paying off, but they're probably 10 to 12 laps away from making their second round of pit stops here in this one.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And speaking of Eric Troiano of TK, excited to see. I know you are, Tony, as well, to see TK going to come back for another shot at the Indianapolis 500 here this coming May.
And what a team, as we see some high side racing here, some battling throughout the pack. As Askew loses that spot to, I believe that is Musselman, who just came into the pits, if not mistaken. You look at Arrow McLaren, SP. I had a chance to spend some time with Alexander Rossi on on Wednesday of this week. Had a little event together, and he was excited. There's a lot of expectations for Rossi to get into that number. I believe he's going to be in the 7 car. That's going to move Felix Rosenquist to the 6 car. But that's a hell of a squad right there. You add Tony Kanaan to the Indianapolis 500, who finished 3rd there last year. You got Felix Rosenquist, who's been very consistent, very fast at that track. Pato Award, we know the runner-up, has been in contention for the last 3 Indianapolis 500 wins. And then you had Alexander Rossi, who we know how fiery and how hungry he is to get back up towards the front at Indianapolis. So Askew does pit. We can expect Presley Sora to come in here in the next 2 to 3 laps as well. The last time he ran about 2 laps past Oliver Askew, who is on the same strategy. So lap number 60 here in this one is underway. And Pinheiro, again, Rish, loving that high side. Looks like we're getting some grip up in that second group.
Yeah, he absolutely is. And I did just want to pipe in with a quick update on one of those drivers we have been following so far throughout this race, Nick DeGroot. Unfortunately, connection issues. We talked about just how annoying internet issues can be with Rodrigo Franzoni missing out on his front row start because of them. And for Nick DeGroot, unfortunately, his night is over with internet issues, so he'll finish P30. So already in that one as well, 4 cars out of this event. Oliver Askew, the last car in this race. He is now down 1 lap, though, after coming off pit road.
So tough break there for a guy that we knew would be there towards the end. But we can't thank Nick DeGroot enough for his dedication to this series, his participation in it year in, year out, week in and week out. Nick DeGroot is always the guy that we know will be there towards the end of these races. As long as, is that, Rich, I'll ask, is that the mother nature of iRacing, sim racing, is the fact that your internet connection could go out?
Oh, for sure. It's they getting that little bit of extra boost out of the engine, a la 2017, Honda Indy 500 engines, just pushing a little bit too hard, trying to get that extra performance, and, reliability issues always strike. So like you mentioned, I mean, so much, luck is obviously a factor with cautions, but, we don't fully get rid of the whole mechanical failure type thing here with iRacing. We still have some of it in its own unique way.
Well, not to toot my own horn, but I will at my pick to win, Alexander Van de Sant, which, is really going off the, that's really taking a risk right there, as you know. Rish leads the way. Malechka, the pole sitter, is second. Pinheiro, third. Sora doing a great job of kind of extending this fuel mileage run. He finds himself in 4th and right on cue, pulls it in for his second stop of the afternoon on lap number 62. So to move him outside of the top 10. But a guy, Rich, that you're very familiar with, who knows how to get it done on a day like today, finds himself currently in the 7th spot. And that is a former winner. And you know who that is. That is Mr. Bennett. They're running inside of the top 10. Henry Bennett, who we know has plenty of experience in this race.
Henry Bennett is incredible to watch, and I was fortunate to witness his 2 championship winning seasons up here in the booth. And I think I got both of his Indy 500s up there as well. So the thing that you notice with Henry Bennett, and pay attention right now because we're talking about him in P7. P7 is not a result that Henry Bennett would ever write home about, but the way he usually runs races is he will sit around top 5, maybe top 10 for the majority of the race, but when it comes to crunch time, when it comes to really figuring this race out and getting down to who is going to win or even lose this race, who's going to make that mistake in the critical moments, Henry Bennett always finds his way towards the front. And unless somebody else catches him in their mess, he's going to be in that conversation. Mark my words. He will be up there inside the top 3 by the end of this race. It's incredible the way that he attacks this race. Like you said, experience goes so far in this type of event. But Henry Bennett, the way he's so methodical about not just this race, but any race that we've ever run here in the Mega Driver 86 INDYCAR Series, it's incredible to watch, again, just how much patience he has behind the wheel.
And Derek, you look inside of the top 10 right now for the first time today, is a guy who has landed on SportsCenter because of his past sim races when IndyCar ran their races back in 2020. But don't look now. Sitting in 10th place, a guy who we know knows how to get towards the front in Indy, and that's Sage Karam.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Sage Karam sitting there in 10. And, unless my eyes are deceiving me, Tony, doesn't that look like the same Dreyer Reinbold delivery that Sage Karam runs at the 500 in May?
It sure does. And we don't know what's coming for that second Dreyer Reinbold car for the 107th running of the Indianapolis 500. We know that our friend here in the Mega Driver 86 series, Steph Wilson, is going to be in the number 24 car, which was the one that Sage Karam piloted last year in the Indianapolis 500. We know Sage has another part-time schedule in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. And I'll say this, and I'm not just saying this because he's running. I don't even think he can hear this. But I've known Sage since his rookie year. I've seen what he's gone through. I've seen as a broadcaster and somebody who covers the sport just how much he's grown and learned and matured as a human being. And it's super cool to see him out there running today. And I surely hope that we see him running in the 107th Indianapolis 500 because it's definitely a more competitive, a more exciting race when Sage Karam's a part of it.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And the excitement as a whole, I think, Tony, for the 107th running is going to be astronomical. And the reason why I say that is the closer we get, it seems like to me, we're getting more cars. And hopefully we can get back to having that bump day that we've always had there for the 500, because I love seeing the fact that we're actually getting more cars. And congratulations to Stephen Wilson being able to get a little more time in car before the 500. It seemed like last year, Tony, that was it the week of, I believe, or going into the month of May, they put their ride together. But now Stephen's going to have a little bit more time in that car.
That's true. And I interviewed him last week, and I said, just the importance of that, right? Like, instead of just throwing it together a week and a half, and the cars in pieces, he goes, man, there's just so much chemistry that can be gained, so much momentum, and we know that car is ready to go. And we're not throwing it all together where at times maybe, maybe something isn't as comfortable or as dialed in as you would possibly like. So Alexander Van der Sant still leads the way as we itch closer to the 70th lap here on the Richmar Florist Indianapolis 500, presented by Open Wheel Jobs. It's been a great one so far this afternoon. Pretty clean and green, just one yellow. We have had 2 incidents so far here on the afternoon. One brought out the yellow. That was on lap number 15. The other did not bring out a yellow flag. So the 10th running of the Richmar Florist Indianapolis 500 well underway, and so far, kudos to everybody for keeping it clean and green. Brizzy Cam is a venture-backed tech company based in Toronto and Boston. I think Rish is in Boston, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. They're on a mission to reimagine the group photo experience. Gone are the days of carrying around a tripod or selfie stick. Tell me about it. They help their customers and users tell better stories around meaningful events. They let anyone tap into nearby cameras to capture group memories at iconic places, as if users were controlling their own native camera app, except now from a perfectly positioned vantage point. Today, you can find Brizzy at well-known sports venues and cultural landmarks across 4 continents. Lap 70 underway, 130 to go. Pit stops right around the corner for these leaders. And Rich, Alexander Van der Sant, plenty of experience. He will pit from the lead here more than likely for the first time this afternoon.
Yeah, he will. Van der Sant right now doing everything he needs to, stretched out that gap to Maleska by about 0.7 of a second, as you see there on your screens. And so, again, not really having to worry too much. He's got lapped cars in front that are able to pull him along. And so, again, you have, I mentioned adjustments. I forgot to mention one more. You have fuel trim adjustment as well. And so you can trim this car out just a little bit, lower the fuel that's going in, lean it out, and just run behind these lapped cars. I think they're running at a pace that's good enough for him that he doesn't really have any urgency to try and get past them, with Maleska trying to get by. So at this point in the race, very much just riding around here, and this is a perfect scenario for our race leader.
Yeah, if not mistaken, so Maleska is there in second. And right in front of our leader, Adriano Pinheiro, that is the lap car that just came into pit, if not mistaken. Yep, that's that Haviland Tony Kanaan / AJ Foyt Racing looking livery with the black and green. That is Troiano, if not mistaken. He was one of the last drivers under green here to make a pit stop.
Yeah, he absolutely was. So a little lap traffic there. So to say, as we're coming up to lap 73, as we've mentioned throughout, very clean, just 2 cautions. It's going to be interesting to see. We talked about strategy earlier, pit strategy to be specific. And it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out, as we're about 27 laps there, Tony, from halfway.
Let's go on board now with the second place driver and our pole sitter, Robert Maleska, as he looks to track down the leader, Adriano Pinheiro. Hawk will take a little break here. And we are back. The second yellow flag of the afternoon in today's 10th running of the Richmar Florist Indy 500 flies on lap number 75. And it is Oliver Askew, a driver who has gone off strategy a little bit as we go back to the Whiskey Cask replay here. The Whiskey Cask replay, we'll see what happened with the veteran Oliver Askew. All by himself here as he heads into one. And again, it's been a while since he has pitted as well. He just drifts a little high, tries to save it, and makes inside contact. So the second yellow of the day, and this guys will spice up some of the strategy as well, with a lot of these drivers trying to extend their fuel mileage.
Yeah, yes, it will. Second caution of the day, as Askew kind of lost it there in the turn. Just a one-car crash. Interesting, Tony, that this was, as we're on board here, seeing what took place. But Oliver having run a lot of laps here at Indianapolis, and just losing it right there on the screen.
Well, it's the second incident we've seen of somebody coming off of one and losing it. So you think about maybe some of the turbulence, maybe some of the wind that goes into it. So we'll see the strategy call here if some of these drivers decide to stay out that are up front. I think, and Rish, you can chime in. You're the strategist. You know what's going on here. I think you come in and you get fresh tires and fuel.
they're all coming in. We're about 26 or so laps into this run, 27. So you stay out, you're only running for about 3 laps. So you're betting on a short caution there. So I think everybody's coming in there. The only car you see that's out, that's Oliver Askew. He is a lap down, so he'll take the wave around and then hope that pit road's still open for him, I think, when he comes back.
I'll be interested to see as I look down the leaderboard where Presley Sora is, who is the only driver. Does he possibly stay out? He's back in 23rd, but remember, he's the only driver on that initial strategy that he was with Oliver Askew, but now with Askew spin, that spices it up for him. So Sora does decide to come in, so that early strategy call not really paying off to keep him up towards the front in this one.
Yeah, it obviously didn't pay off, as you said. So he's gonna have to drum up a
So as we see these cars come back on to the race course under this yellow, as we get a look at Robert Maleska, our Indianapolis 500 pole sitter for this one.
Yeah,
as we will split back through, and Alex Van de Sant looks like is your leader with Pinheiro second. Chris Wilhite making his way inside of the top 3 for the first time this afternoon is third, and fourth right there, Rish, you've talked about it. Henry Bennett putting himself in a position to win yet another one of these Richmar Florist Indianapolis 500s.
Absolutely. Wilhite and Bennett, big winners on and off of pit road. Maleska, the big loser off of pit road there. Remember, he was second behind Van de Sant as they came down onto the pits. It's a long 10-second stop for Maleska, and that's going to drop him down to 7th here. So he has his work cut out if he wants to repeat from his Indy 500 last year, but of course not even at the halfway point yet in this one. So he's got some time to get back up towards the front.
Yep, so 77 of 200 completed here in the Richmar Florist Indianapolis 500, presented by Open Wheel Racing Jobs, connecting talent, driver, and people to job opportunities in open wheel racing. When Open Wheel Racing Jobs is committed to attracting the next generation of motorsports talent by promoting diversity, leadership to esports, technical schools, social, and media. So social media, Open Wheel Racing Jobs, be sure to check them out. We thank them for their sponsorship of today's race, the 10th running of the Richmar Florist Indianapolis 500, presented by Open Wheel Racing Job. Rich, hard to believe that we are on the 10th running of this great event.
Yeah, it's crazy how quickly that's gone by in some ways. I mean, it comes to the benefit of having 2 per year. But no, I mean, the way that this event is organized, and that's a massive hats off to Chad Frankenfield, who runs 6th right now. This is his favorite event in the world in real life. And of course, he's tried to replicate that to the best of his ability here in iRacing. And I think in terms of the pageantry leading up to the event, we have a separate day for qualifying. We have bump day. We have Fast 9 qualifying. Then last night we had Carb Night, where we had the Freedom 150, the Freedom 50 at Lucas Oil Raceway, the Freedom 75, so USF 2000s, Indy Pro 2000s. We had Classic Dallara Indy cars and then sprint cars all racing last night, building up towards this event. They really create a whole couple of weeks around this, and it's been so impressive to watch the growth of this from barely having 33 cars making the field. Even back when I was driving, back on the console days, we capped it at 16 cars were in the field, and now these past couple of seasons, 50+ cars attempting to make the field on the Friday before the event. So incredible job from Chad Frankenfield and the whole crew at the Elite Racing Leagues for putting on another incredible show here.
Yeah, absolutely. As Chad Frankenfield looks for his first win in this great event. And again, that schedule very much similar to what we see in the month of May as far as numerous days of practice, qualifying, bump day, a carb day, the night before, which I know that Chad Frankenfield is always at IRP, an event that, you talked about that Freedom 75 and Freedom 50. Those are races that I've spotted for. You get some USAC action, which I know there's been some sprint car races across this whole series and Elite Racing Network. So as the pace car is off here, the green flag will fly on the restart on lap number 80. Alex Van de Sant back up front. Adriano Pinheiro is second. Wilhite is third. Henry Bennett fourth, A.J. Musselman fifth, Frankenfield, Molesca, Murphy, Sudik, and Sage Karam rounding out your top 10 as Van de Sant takes them high off corner number 4 for the third restart of the afternoon. Green flag back in the air, and we're back racing in the Richmar Florist Indianapolis 500. A very slow restart there. Van der Sant brought him down pretty slow. There's a gap between third and fourth, but we'll see if Pinheiro can set him up down the backstretch to take the lead here. We know Pinheiro loves to run that high side, and Wilhite currently running third. That's the closest he's been towards the front of the field.
Yeah, Wilhite had a good restart with the leaders, but Pinheiro's the one who may be able to make a move here heading into turn number 3. It doesn't look like he's setting up to do so, but he does like that higher lane. And look at this, Henry Bennett trying the outside of Chris Wilhite. That's a bold move here early on this restart. Again, not even at the halfway point yet, but Bennett seemingly comfortable. Ooh, but maybe just taps the outside wall coming off the 4.
Close call there. Very similar to what we've seen in the past with Tony Stewart, and that's going to allow to the inside. That's going to allow Musselman to look for that position. Chad Frankenfield ready to pounce as well as they go side by side down the backstretch. That's Musselman and Frankenfield. They flip-flop back and forth in that 5th position. It's going to belong to Chad Frankenfield. They head down into turn number 3.
Yeah, and here we go. Another side-by-side. Chris Wright and Peter Dempsey. Wright's trying to move up into 11th position ahead of Dempsey. He's got the inside line. Dempsey hanging on the outside again. That's where Bennett was able to, though, keep it off the wall out of 4. And we're kind of starting to see guys potentially move back towards that single file style of driving here. Again, still early days in this race, so not quite ready to turn up the wick. But on these restarts, you're given a little bit of an opportunity to get maybe not free, but a little bit cheaper position. And cheaper overtaking opportunities. So that's what we see here. Pinheiro, I'm kind of surprised he hasn't gone for it yet on Van de Sant, as close as he's been heading into turn 3 these past couple of laps.
Yeah, that's exactly what was going to be my next point. He's right there. We know that he can make that move. We know that he's gone to that high side when needed. He has a fast race car, but we talked about this earlier in this race. Derek and I did, Rish. How much do you want to show right now? Not even to the halfway mark of this going.
Yeah, you're not showing everything, but and for Pinheiro, this could honestly just be a play here for, Van de Sant has nobody in front. He's going to be burning fuel. If you sit behind, you're just creating more opportunity for yourself strategy-wise. That could be the play here from the 56 as well, and because it's pretty clear here that I think if he wanted to pop out, he could and make that move and kind of swap with Van de Sant. But he knows that there's a good chance we'll have another caution. This field won't really have an opportunity to stretch out too much. So there's no real benefit in flip-flopping with Van de Sant. As I say that, he does decide to do that, go to the lead. But possibly just that fuel save is the main focus there. We'll see if Van de Sant may be struggling right now, if he's going to come back at Pinheiro, but Wilhite right there as well. So when they're swapping, they got to be sure that they're doing that in such a way that neither of them are going to lose out to Chris Wilhite.
So I believe for the first time this afternoon on lap 84, Adriano Pinheiro takes the lead, but they are stacked up. That top 4 throw a blanket over them in turn 3. As they come out of 3, it's Pinheiro, Van de Sant, Wilhite, Bennett, and Frankenfield. The top 5 all nose to tail as Frankenfield looks to grab that 4th position. Yellow flag for the 3rd time here this afternoon comes on lap 84. We've got a crash in turn number 3. That is Scott Crump, and that's Stay Tuned Esports. So let's check back with the Whiskey Cask replay here to see what went wrong for that car piloted by Crump.
Looks like the first contact between 2 cars that we'll see here tonight. It's Crump and Alexander Regan.
Regan looks to make the move a little late. I couldn't tell there, Rish, if there was a little bit of contact or if Crump just missed that corner and it was too late and the back end just stepped out on him.
Yeah, tough to see here for sure. I want to try and get some different camera angles. Here we may see, there's Regan there. Oh man, I think that might have just been a late move to the inside there from Regan.
And correct me if I'm wrong here, and more so educate me, Rish. Sometimes in these races and these simulations, there are crashes that happen due to not glitches. I know you have a term for. Is this maybe something where that came to play? Because I don't.
Yep.
I think
There's
he's
no
losing it.
contact.
Yeah, I think he's losing. I think, to me, and Derek and Rish, you guys can chime in. To me, it looks like Crump was a little bit too high, and by the time that he could turn that thing into turn 3, it was already too late, and the back end stepped around on him.
I think you're spot on for that. There's netcode. There you go. That's the call from race control. So you saw there was no physical contact between the two cars. There was a gap that still existed. I'm interested in the decision making there from race control, because I think they would have still come together had they just because they haven't at this point. Or at least at the way the incident shaped out. But yeah, netcode is what it's called. Cars basically come close together. There's maybe a little bit of disconnect between two internet connections. We've talked about that a couple of times tonight, and that's where that comes up. So suddenly, on one person's screen there is contact, and another there's no contact, and that can sometimes be the result. So you can't fault the driver for it if that is the result of an incident, and so that's what race control's decision making was there.
So another yellow here early on. This is our third caution as we itch closer to the halfway point in this one. I don't think we will see pit stops, as we're only about, I believe, Rich, 5 to 7 laps from the last caution. But Derek, let's get your thoughts here. It's starting to get a little bit racy and a little bit more chippy throughout the field.
Yeah, it is, and I see that Adriano Pinero is at P1, and it makes me wonder. I know we still got a lot of racing left, but how many of the guys back in the field see or know that Pinero is at P1? They're like, oh no, here we go again. Just reverting back to the season that he has had, the dominant season that he has had so far. So interesting to see what some of the mindsets are of the drivers seeing Pinero at P1.
Yeah, Pinero, guys, we've talked about numerous times, knows how to be there at the end. Let's go through this field a little bit more in depth. Pinero and Van de Sant, your two leaders, are both up 4 positions. Chris Wilhite is up 7 spots to 3rd. Henry Bennett, who's won this race multiple times, finds himself 4th. Chad Frankenfield is 5th. Musselman is 6th. Our pole sitter, Maleska, finds himself 7th. Murphy, 8th. Sage Karam up 16 positions, currently 9th. Nicholas Sudek running 10th. He is up 2 spots. So Shane Coogan, Dudes Castro Neves, and Sage Karam, your biggest movers, as Coogan has moved up 15 spots, but Dudes Castro Neves and Sage Karam both up 16 spots here over the first 85 laps in this 10th running of the Richmar Florist Indianapolis 500.
Yeah, as you stated, Tony, a lot of previous winners there in the top 10. Also, too, a lot of individuals looking for their first win. So definitely a lot of racing left to go. And as you mentioned, it is getting pretty edgy, as you say, getting down to halfway.
As we get ever closer to this halfway point in this edition of the Richmar Florist Indianapolis 500, pace car off the track. So the next time by, that'll be lap number 89. We will go back to green flag racing. Rish, how chaotic and how aggressive do you expect some of these guys inside of the top 10 to be to try to continue to move up before we hit this next round of pit stops?
I'm not sure we've reached 100% yet in terms of chaos. I think we'll probably be looking at maybe 60 to 70%, where it's the urgency is starting to settle in a little bit. The end is in sight. We're getting close to halfway. There have been more cautions here, so you're kind of wanting to get away from the back of the pack or the middle of the pack, where you could get caught up in one of those incidents on the restart. And that could play into each other right there. Guys are going to be making moves to try and get track position, and that could be resulting here in more cautions in the next couple of laps. So something to keep an eye out for. We could be in a bit of train of yellows here for a few laps before we get back to a long green flag run.
And Huck, you can chime in or let me know if this is possible, but maybe during the next yellow flag, if there are no pit stops, maybe we can chime in with Chad Frankenfield to kind of get his thoughts on the first half of this race, if that is possible, as we get ready for this green flag to come back out. The last restart, Van de Sant was in the lead. We saw him take the entire field high. Adriano Pinheiro will do the same thing. Van de Sant ride all over the back T-bar of him, tucking in behind his Wilhite, and then Henry Bennett. I think we'll see Henry Bennett maybe step out and try to make a move here going into one. Green flag back in the air, nose to tail, the top 10 as they head down into turn number 1. A great restart here by Adriano Pinheiro.
Yeah, as they dive down into one, Pinheiro showing the way here at lap 89. Let's see what the field, if they have anything for him.
So Pinheiro gets a little low there and then drifts high. That's going to give Alexander Van de Sant an opportunity down the backstretch. Risk heading into turn number 3. Van de Sant looking to take the point back over.
Van de Sant looking to take back over, and a lot more aggression maybe than I initially thought on this restart, because you can probably see it on your screen here. It's cloudy. All of a sudden, the sun's been covered up. Track temperature is going to drop a couple of degrees, and these drivers are going to have more grip than they know what to do with. So we could see some spectacular moves here on this restart.
So Pinheiro looking to grab the lead back on the outside, which is the line that he prefers, but Van de Sant to the lead. So Van de Sant takes advantage of the mistake for Pinheiro going a little bit too low there. In turn 2, drifted high. Van de Sant had the run. He has the lead, and he will do that snake thing that we've seen Simon Pagenaud, Marcus Ericsson do so well. He pulls up and now has the lead. Hold on one second, guys.
Yeah, as we're coming up to complete lap 90, Van der Sant is at the point there, as he just took the lead over Pinheiro just a handful of laps ago, as we burst down into turn number 1 there, Resh.
What a move there from Rodrigo Franzoni, outside 3 wide on Peter Dempsey and Blaise Andrich. I think it was actually Shane Coogan, as Andrich has taken that move, but incredible move there. Franzoni, we've known all day that he's got the pace. He's the guy who did start on that first row. And man, oh man, what a move he's putting together, and what a run he's putting together here to get himself back up front, just slicing and dicing this field here on this past lap.
Yeah, you want to get to a chance here as you reach the 100 lap mark before this next stop, that you've got the most out of your car. Burning fuel at this point, it's kind of a shootout because everybody's going to have to pit here over the next several laps. So, definitely a battle here throughout most of the field. And again, you've got guys like maybe Henry Bennett, Chad Frankenfield, Maleska, maybe saving some of their stuff. But another move here towards the back of the field, and he's really making that thing work on the outside, Rich.
Yeah, this is incredible here watching, all of these drivers, the way they've taken this restart. I think I might have been a little bit conservative on that guess for aggression here, but yeah, I think you also want maybe just that honor of being the guy who leads at the halfway point, if that's on your mind. So between Van de Sant and Pinheiro, we could see a little bit of racing in 7 laps time. But seems to be now things will start to settle out. Guys still close to the racetrack, again, just opportunities. Sun's also back out, as you can kind of see here with just the brighter pictures on your screens, and so that's going to slow things down. Track temperature is going to get back up. Track's going to become just a little bit more slick.
Hey, Rich, take us inside of the cockpit for these drivers right now. They're in their sims, basements, spare bedrooms. When something like that happens on a restart where the sun kind of goes away, is that something that they can just visually see, or do they have it up to the date what the weather and the wind is doing, and as it's ever changing, as we know on most Indiana afternoons?
So they don't have the track temperature available to them inside the cockpit, so you can often see it, obviously visually, and then with the feel once you kind of get rolling. These guys have such an incredible feel just through their hands, of course. You're only really getting feedback from your steering wheel on where the levels of grip are, which is really the most incredible part of this. You don't have all of your senses to really support you in terms of driving these cars at a high speed. Some folks will be fortunate to have, again, somebody sitting up a spotter or a crew chief checking on that. You have that information available within the iRacing sim. It's just not available on your dashboard at any moment. But I know some of these guys have some pretty fancy overlays and stuff like that they run too, that they might have that temperature available to.
So Van de Sant leads it with Pinheiro second, Wilhite third. Henry Bennett finds himself fourth. Chad Frankenfield fifth. Our pole sitter Maleska runs sixth. It's AJ Musselman in seventh. Sage Karam inside of the top 10 now runs eighth. Murphy ninth. Nicholas Sudek runs in the 10th position, as we may have a swap for the lead here as Pinheiro all over the back end of Alex Van de Sant tries that high side. All right, Derek, we will start with you as we reach the halfway mark here in just 4 short laps. Who's impressed you the most, and who's your pick here with a little over 100 laps to go?
Just looking at in the top 10, the gentleman that has gained the most so far since the green flag drop, somebody that has experience, absolutely. Sage Karam, I'm definitely keep my eye on him. Experience in iRacing and then also in real life racing as well. Going to be interesting to see when we get to the halfway point what Sage Karam decides to do. But you were talking about weather, and curious to see when this next sound of pit stops comes up, how much is that going to play a factor in this last pit stop with about 100 laps to go?
Rish, as we itch near towards that halfway point, guys that have piqued your interest so far, and your thoughts on the first 250 or so miles in this 10th running of the Richmar Florist Indy 500, presented by Open Wheel Racing Jobs.
Yeah, clean racing generally is the thought, but I mean, guy I'm going to keep my eyes on throughout this entire night is going to be Rodrigo Franzoni, and we've been doing that as well. Maybe a little bit slow initially to kind of break out of that that back half of the field. He's now inside the top 12, and it might slow down a little bit again here, but on restarts, keep an eye out for this guy. He was electric on this last restart. Again, outside 3 wide. Nobody does that into turn number 1, but he did. And yeah, expect him to make some moves. He's got a lot of pace, and he's got some guts here to make the right moves to get all the way to the front.
Again, as we reach the halfway mark of this race, the 10th running of the Richmar Florist Indianapolis 500. I accidentally X'd out on something, so I'm not really seeing what I need to see. Rish, if you can, through the leaderboard, let's talk about some of those drivers that unfortunately are out of this one here early.
Yeah, absolutely. A surprising number of DNFs, but we saw that with Scott Crump and Alexander Regan. Those two were the cause of the most recent caution, neither of them still running. Then Nick DeGroot, we talked about his issues with internet problems. Gavin Hibbs, we didn't actually see what happened to Gavin there. Ended up parking his car on lap 40. So don't quite have an update on that. May reach out to Dave Huck down at Race Control, see if he can give us an update on what happened there. And Jari Brupiker, we mentioned, had an incident, and Jared Rexing, then the one who brought out the first caution. So with that, that's what do we have there? 6 cars out of this event. Yeah, so not too crazy in terms of attrition as we tick over to lap 100. We'll complete halfway in just a moment's time, but definitely slowly but surely starting to kind of take away some of the cars in this field.
Cross flags in the air as Alex Van de Sant is your leader at the halfway mark of this contest. Adriana Pinheiro, Chris Willite, Bennett, and Frankenfield, your top 5 halfway home in the 10th running of the Richmar Florist Indianapolis 500, presented by Open Wheel Racing Jobs on an overcast afternoon from the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. I'm Tony Donahue. Derek is with us, as well as Rich Khosla, and Mr. Dave Heck doing a great job with us as well, getting you some awesome pictures throughout this 500-mile contest as we are halfway through this running of the Indianapolis 500, the 10th running of the Richmar Florist Indianapolis 500. We want to thank Dark Horse Indy Series. The Dark Horse Indy Series is about creating a fun and competitive iRacing league environment. The series' experienced drivers come from all walks of life and are from all around the world. Dark Horse strives to respect all fellow racers and have a blast doing it. See how you can join the fun and be a part of the family at darkhorseracingseries.com or on Twitter at DH Racing Series on Twitter. We'll let Rish step away here momentarily. He's doing a great job. We appreciate his time. He is fighting through a little bit of a cold here, so we're going to give him an opportunity to step away, get right, get some water into the system, and be ready for this shootout here that we will see over the remaining 98 or so laps. Derek Vance, Tony Donahue. Derek, we're getting close to seeing pit stops once again, but it's been a lot of Alex Van de Sande here. So we are under the yellow flag, our fourth caution here of the afternoon. So right as we were talking about it being clean and green, Derek, so far, we have a crash. And once again, it's Oliver Askew along with Seth Eggert. So maybe we can get to the whiskey cask replay here. Yes, we will in the Elite Racing League to see what happened. Derek, walk us through this replay and what you're seeing.
Yeah, I didn't get to see what brought the flag out to the caution flag. So as soon as this replay gets fired up, we'll bring it to you. But yes, I do have to say I know that Rish talked about. Here we go, as we see here, going 3 wide across the yard of bricks, going into turn number 1, and again, wow. Sends Oliver Askew spinning, Tony, and I think Oliver Askew there, along with the other 2 cars, especially Askew, was a innocent bystander because by the looks of what I seen right there, Tony, Oliver had nowhere to go.
Yeah, let's see if maybe we can check it out one more time. It was tough to see the initial contact or initial happen. I think that Seth Eggert got put into a situation there in the kicking the tires, number 63. They're 3 wide going into 1. Yeah, it looks like Eckert just so just lost it there, and Oliver Askew had nowhere to go, very much so. It looks like Presley Sora was the one who just lost it there. There was a tally issue. Sora loses it, very similar to that incident we seen about 8 or 9 years ago with James Hinchcliffe and Ed Carpenter, going 3 wide into turn number 1. You just simply can't do that, but I think we will see some pit stops coming up here. Let's again go on board with Presley Sora. I think he just simply loses it here, trying to keep it intact. And then, like a top goes Oliver Askew, and Seth Eggert, just an innocent bystander there arriving on the scene.
Yeah, it definitely looks like that on board that machine there. Tough break for all of them. I know Sora and Askew for sure were on different strategies. Let's look from Askew's point of view here, see if he becomes the innocent bystander.
Yeah, just a tough racing incident there. I mean, when you go into 3 wide, things get a little dodgy, things get a little touchy. And sometimes that car will step out on you, and sometimes it collects somebody else's day. So we talked about this, Derek, at the beginning of the race. Sometimes you got to be a little bit more lucky than good. You got to keep yourself out of situations like that. And for Seth Eggert, who was clean so far this afternoon, ends up as an innocent bystander. We just see Oliver Askew spin like a top. So big thank you to Oliver Askew for participating in today's Richmar Florist Indianapolis 500. If not mistaken, we've had some pit stops as Chad Frankenfield looks like he is P1. So interesting to see if Frankenfield decided to stay in. I don't know if there's a replay on that, but Van de Sande now second, Pinheiro third. So if these drivers did pit, we can look at the last lap since their pit. And I believe, Frankenfield decides to stay out, and the rest of the field has decided to come into pit at lap 103. So it's been since lap 76 for Chad Frankenfield. So very interesting strategy here. Dave, if we can maybe find a replay, I mean, this is 27 laps into a stint. I almost feel something was awry or something happened that maybe kept Chad Frankenfield off of pit road. And indeed, let's check out the Whiskey Cask replay as the leaders and the rest of the top 10 hit pit road. I believe Chad Frankenfield is running 5th. So here is the Whiskey Cask replay. Running 5th. Does he miss his? Oh,
He okey doked him, didn't he?
well, I mean, I don't know what the commitment line is there. He was certainly committed. I'm not going to question Chad in that number 15. He is the leader. I maybe he's expecting this thing to go right back to a yellow flag condition, but this is a risky, very bold strategy out of the veteran Chad Frankenfield, looking for his first ever win in the Richmar Florist Indianapolis 500. So we'll see how this pans out for that number 15 car up front for Chad Frankenfield.
Yeah, Tony, you're absolutely right. If this doesn't pay off for Frankenfield, I'm afraid within the next couple laps, he's going to be left hanging out to dry, because everyone else behind him went, possibly tires and fuel. Frankenfield stayed out. Like you said, he last pitted at lap 76. That's almost 30 laps ago now. So he could be potentially hung out to dry if this strategy does not pay off.
We'll have to chime. Maybe we can. I don't know if we want to bother him right now as the pace car is off. But I question. And we'll get Rish's perspective when he comes back. That I honestly don't understand that. I'm not in the cockpit, so I'm not going to tell you fully that I know remotely what I'm talking about. But man, that's tough, because he's no more than 7 laps away from having to come back down pit road, and nobody else will have to. So that's going to find him, for lack of a better term, what I call back in the crap of the field when he does have to come back in a pit.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think the one thing, like you mentioned, Chad's got to be banking on with this is another caution coming out, because if he doesn't, I think what you just talked about, Tony, you're absolutely spot on with.
Well, and even if there's a yellow in 5 to 7 laps, these guys behind him are not going to come back in. So on the restart, Frankenfield has the lead. Second place is Alex Van de Sant. So there is a lap car right now between Frankenfield and Van de Sant, as that lap car will look to get his lap back, looks to the outside. If you're Frankenfield, I think you wisely just let him go, and then maybe you suck in behind and start saving some fuel. This is a little bit too far out to roll the dice and stretch the fuel and hope it stays green. But interesting to see here what Frankenfield does. Van de Sant runs second, Pinheiro third, Wilhite fourth, and Bennett currently in the 5th position, as Frankenfield will go back to the inside and put that car back down 1 lap as we go back towards back into the top 10 here. Wright Musselman battling back and forth here. But again, Chad Frankenfield leads. He is the only driver that did not pit on that last caution. So either this is going to be something that comes back and bites them, or this is going to be the boldest go-for-it strategy that maybe we've seen here in all 10 of the runnings of the Richmar Florist Indy 500.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's either going to pay off for Chad, or it's going to hurt him drastically. Which one of that is will remains to be seen, as we see a pass going into turn 1.
And we do have a pass into turn 1. That is the lap car. Trying to get his lap back. I'm not necessarily sure, Huck, if you can. That would be, Cesar Sabo. So they're going to switch. They're going to swap it back and forth here. If you're Frankenfield, you might want him in front of you to save some of that fuel, but you don't want to get into a situation here, Derek, where you're swapping back and forth, and that air can be chopped from in front of you, and you make a mistake and find yourself in the wall, kind of battling back and forth with a lap car. Yeah,
you're absolutely right. I think that might be Chad's best bet there. As you see Cesar pass him again, is just let him go and conserve fuel. He's got to be getting awful low. Pitting on lap 76, almost 30 some laps ago. So bold strategy to say the least. We'll see what happens with it.
So Frankenfield still battling with that lap car. Van de Sant just kind of sitting back saying, all right, I'm going to give you guys a little bit of space out front with 90 laps to go. I'm going to give you guys a bit of space out front to kind of duke it back and forth between you. As we run through the rest of the top 10, Alex Van de Sant finds himself second. Adriano Pinheiro third. Wilhite fourth. Henry Bennett fifth. Maleska, our pole sitter, is 6th. Mark Murphy, 7th. Sudik is 8th. AJ Musselman, 9th. And Chris Wright finds himself 10th. Somebody who's lost some spots that was in the top 10 earlier in the race is Sage Karam. He was one of our biggest movers here when we hit the halfway point around lap number 100. So Frankenfield out front with the lap car between him and second place Alex Van de Sant. Adriano Pinheiro is in third, and that lap car will dive off, and he will come down pit road. But again, it has been more than 30 laps since Frankenfield has came in. In fact, it's been 42 laps. So a hell of a fuel strategy and a fuel save here in this stint for Chad Frankenfield. But Derek, as you know, we expect him to come down pit road maybe as soon as this lap as he touches that white line, which is usually an indicator that he's getting ready to find himself coming down pit road.
Yeah, he's going to have to find himself down here shortly, but it's going to be interesting if he's going to stay on this strategy. If he can stretch this out, like you said, 40-plus laps, depending on how long he runs this, will he have to come back out again? Will he have to go back in again? That's going to be the interesting thing here.
Yeah, and it will be. I mean, so we're on lap 40. It was lap 76. So 30 would be 106. So we're looking at 37 laps. I mean, I think 38 is your extreme most. So maybe when everybody else pits 3 times, maybe he's thinking a 2-parter. We will see the strategy play out here over the remainder of this race. And if you don't mind, let's go on board up front with our leader, Chad Frankenfield. So Chad Frankenfield stretches it 39 laps on this stint, and he will surrender the lead and make that slow, lonely trek down pit road for the pit stop here on lap number 116. Tony Donahue, Derek Vance, Rich Khosla with you. Rich, I know we got you back here. You've got to be shocked by this strategy, but if anybody's put up the most laps around this track, it's Chad Frankenfield.
Yeah, I think my initial shock was pretty high at just the move from Chad Frankenfield, because like you guys were saying, already pretty late on that run. But I will say, hugely impressive how long he was able to run into this stint, and it offsets him by about 13 laps from the rest of the field, which is not insignificant. It's about half a stint, just under half a stint there offset. So, I mean, it gives him options potentially depending on how cautions fly, and he could also have a vision for himself that'll get him to the end of this race here, and that could be what he's playing to. I think right now with 2 more stops, I think he should be able to make it to the end of this one. Others maybe a little bit tighter on that front.
And Rich, let me ask you this. Chad obviously has a lot of experience. He runs this series. He's a great driver, but he hasn't flirted with the lead outside of the first probably 10 to 12 laps, as he may be going, man, my car is 5th or 6th best right now, so I've got to do something bold. Because at this point, I mean, you're not really racing for points, you're racing for that first victory in this Rich Mar Florist Indianapolis 500.
I think you're spot on there. I don't know if I'd say he has the 5th or 6th fastest car, but he was mired back in 5th and 6th, which, he wanted track position. I think that was a play for track position to try and get up front, lead a couple of laps there, and maybe get some luck with cautions where they'll fly in his favor. This could be super beneficial for him. I mean, we get a caution in the next 5 to 10 laps, and all of a sudden Chad Frankenfield has a nice little cushion over the field.
The 4 cautions here so far through this one as we are past the halfway mark, and we will reach lap number 120 with Alex Van de Sant in the lead, Pinheiro second, Wilhite third, Bennett fourth, and Maleska fifth. We will see if this is that bold strategy that is going to propel Chad Frankenfield to his first career win in this Indy 500. I hope he'll run to the kitchen and pour milk all over himself if that ends up being. I think, Huck, is there, we'll bring in our producer. Huck, is there a bounty still if a driver can prove that he dumped himself with milk?
Yeah, I'm going to put $25 on that if he can send me a video of that.
Well, we will see who the winner is here. It's been a lot of Alex Van de Sant and Adriano Pinheiro up front, but as you know, a guy like Bennett, who is fourth, can get up there. Derek, let's go to you. It's been all Van de Sant, but Adriano Pinheiro has proved that he has the juice to be able to win this one as well.
Yes, he does, especially the season that Adriano Pinheiro has had, as we see RC Enerson coming in to the pits. But I was doing a little bit of math. Tony, I know that's your favorite subject. Frankenfield, the fuel strategy that he is on, if he's going to stay out again for the next 39 laps, that puts him at 154. And then if it's another 39 laps, he's going to come up 7 laps short at 193. So he's got to be hoping for those caution laps.
Indeed. So 79 to go. Adriano Pinheiro back to the point, takes over the lead from Van de Sant. Wilhite second, Bennett third, Maleska now up to the top 5. Our Pulsator back inside of the top 5. You can throw a blanket over that top 4. It's really starting to get racy here with 79 laps to go.
Yes, it is. And you see, we've pointed out throughout this whole race, one of the returning winners, Henry Bennett, finds himself in the top 5. I'm pretty sure that's where he wants to be with just less than 80 laps to go.
So pit stops coming up here shortly for some of these drivers. Probably another 10 to 15 laps. Although if you pull the Franken strategy, as Chad Frankenfield did, you might be able to push this to 39 if you get a few cautions. But Pinheiro out front, Van de Sant second, Wilhite third, Henry Bennett fourth, and Maleska running in the 5th position. Rish, we're getting to the nitty gritty here, right? It's starting to ramp up. We've seen it on these last couple of restarts. There's some other strategy being played out. Where do you want to be here over this next, let's call it 75 laps?
Yeah, you probably want to be inside this top 10 for sure, maybe even a little bit further up from that. Normally, I think lap 150, lap 160 or so is when we'll start to see things kick off. What I'm curious to see is, for me, the magic number in terms of lap count is lap 136. If guys are able to stretch out this run to 136, then it's a 2-stop race to the end of this. If they can't quite make it that far, your odds of making it on just 2 more stops from here gets kind of smaller and smaller there. You're going to need cautions to help you out. So just something to keep an eye out for. Right now, we should be seeing 2 more stops if we stay green. Of course, cautions can shake things up from there.
Cautions always do, especially as this thing ramps up towards the end. 75 laps to go. Adriano Pinheiro, your current leader in this one, and really over the last, I would say, 100 or so laps, him and Van de Sant have been the class of the field, swapping the lead back and forth. We see some blocking here. I believe, Rich, that's AJ Musselman throwing the block on right as they battle in the short chute between 3 and 4.
Yeah, Chris Wright, AJ Musselman, little bit of movement there heading into turn 3 that you don't love to see, especially with how high commitment that corner can be. But yeah, Chris Wright, at least for now, still behind Musselman. One thing we have seen is, not too many overtakes once we get past the initial restart phase. Guys, though, still able to run relatively close to each other if they want to put together those runs, but you really have to build up to it. So something like that for Wright could set him back a couple of laps, but here we go. Mark Rebelas trying to make a move on Rodrigo Franzoni, has to back out of it. That's Del Porto on Rebelas. Trying to get into the top 12 then for the drive the number 27. Del Porto kind of thought he'd be more of a factor in this race. Haven't really talked about him that much. I don't know if he's been inside the top 10 at all tonight so far. He's trying to get there still. But he's one of those guys as well. When we talk fuel strategy, we talk unique strategies like we saw with Frankenfield. Rebelas hanging on there. But he's one of those guys who could also potentially stretch out a fuel run to make it to the end here. So we'll keep an eye out on him. He could be scheming something there.
And as Dave Huck points out, our great producer here, not much time and fall off on that stint for Chad Frankenfield there. On lap 182, he ran a 41.4 and a 41 flat at lap 118. So really not much of a fall off there. Dave, if you don't mind, zoom in on that car right there behind Victor Del Porto. That would be Mark Rebelas. I have to give him some love as a guy who would cheer for a turtle if the word Menards or Glidden was on it. That's a beautiful looking race car. Looks to be an ode to the Tony Stewart, Scott Brayton days of the mid 90s Tony Stewart's championship. So that is probably the only livery out there, guys, that can top a Danny Sullivan High Life livery for me. And that's the Menard Glidden colors that we see there in the mid 90s into even the early 2000s with guys like Greg Ray.
Talking about liveries, just a couple cars in front of him, Rodrigo Franzoni. Doesn't that, Tony, look like a lot of the 2022 IndyCar champion Will Power?
It certainly does, and I know a lot of these guys sometimes base their schemes off of what works best for their sponsors or maybe even some of your favorite drivers. As we kind of settle into a rhythm here, let's go around the room. Rich, we'll start with you. I'm putting you in the 11th running next year. What's your livery going to look like?
Oh, man, that's no time to build up for that. Oh, my gosh.
On the spot, baby. That's how we do it.
I feel like, I mean, the first one that comes to mind when you ask me a livery it's got to be the Yellow Submarine, man. I mean, I can't think of anything else that immediately pops to mind that I wouldn't want to rip.
Mr. Vance, let's go over to you.
You know what? I like the old TK, the 711.
Okay. Mr. Huck, our great producer, you're doing a great job of showing us all the sights and sounds of this 10th running of the Richmar Florist Indianapolis 500. What's your livery, your go-to?
My go-to is still one that's used every year, the Pennzoil Z7 Special.
Yep, there we go. I like it. As Adriano Pinheiro continues to lead with Alexander Van de Sant right in tow in second, followed by Chris Wilhite, who's moved up to the third spot after starting 10th. You got Henry Bennett looking for another win in this race, and our pole sitter, Robert Malechka, currently rounding out your top five. Yeah, I would probably go with something along the lines of the Menards Glidden livery, but I'm going to give you maybe a dark horse pick here of a car that always looked good, always was one that you could see. And I'm not going to try to promote what the actual product is, but it was the old, I don't know how clean, but the old Skull Bandit livery, which there's actually the Skull Bandit IndyCar from Teo Fabi in the basement of the IMS Museum. So if you get a chance to head down there, you will see that race car. So many awesome liveries, not only in this race, but in the future races will come here over the next several of weeks and several months. As really, Rich, we turn to that 2023 season, as we know that'll be here so quickly.
Oh, man. 2023 season, I mean, both here in the Elite Racing Leagues and, of course, in real life, I am extremely excited for to follow. I think real life, you guys were talking about it early, Rossi and the McLaren. I came and started following Indianapolis, the Indy 500, and, of course, IndyCar because of Alexander Rossi. And to see him get back into a competitive seat, I hope, is something I'm very much looking forward to. But here within this, if Pinheiro can pull it off, we've had a history now of guys winning their first championship, then going back to back. So if Pinheiro is able to pull it off here in 2022B, do we watch 2023A of just more Pinheiro dominance? Or could we see more of Joshua Chin, who's been really the only guy able to bring the fight to Pinheiro? Van de Sant finally showing up late in this season, and he's been great too.
Under 70 laps to go, and this one, Adriano Pinheiro still leads. Van de Sant is second, Wilhite third, Henry Bennett is fourth. Let's step away for a minute, go on board with the fourth place and winner multiple times of this race in the 07, Henry Bennett. All right, we are back here, the Richmar Florist Indy 500, the 10th running, brought to you by Open Wheel Racing Jobs and the Mega Driver 86 INDYCAR Series. Tony Donahue, Rich Khosla, Derek Vance with you as we itch closer to the final laps of this race. 136 complete of the 200 as we hit lap number 137. Alex Van de Sant, your leader. Adriano Pinheiro is second. Chris Wilhite third. Henry Bennett currently fourth. Mutzka is fifth. Murphy, Sudik, Musselman, Wright, and Andrus find themselves inside of the top 10. Rish right now, as we see a few pit stops, Peter Dempsey pulling it in. A lot of fuel save, a lot of fuel strategy going on here inside of the top 10.
Yeah, a lot of fuel strategy. Guys right now just kind of conserving their pace a little bit. Van de Sant and Pinheiro actually have started to get back on it on this most recent lap, and that's probably why, because Pinheiro's peeling off onto pit road. So we've hit that lap 136. That was the number that I was kind of mentioning. That's 32 lap stints now to the end for Adriano Pinheiro, and it'll be even less for Van de Sant, Wilhite, and everybody else there inside the top 10. So yeah, that's kind of what we've been seeing, but about 0.3 of a second or so lap after lap is what Chad Frankenfield has on the rest of these cars. Because he pit off strategy, he pitted a little bit later than everybody, he's able to push and use more fuel. So he's kind of trying to just pick up more and more pace, and potentially through the pit cycles could gain that track position back. And again, if he's able to get back on the same kind of cycling and strategy as everybody else, maybe with how cautions fall, puts him back in front. As here we go, the rest of the field now all piling onto pit road.
Yeah, Adriano Pinheiro is the first of the leaders to pit, and now everybody cycles in. Alexander Van de Sant in as well. Chris Wilhite, Henry Bennett, all making what will be probably the second to last pit stop. Nobody can make it on 60 laps, but I think we'll see two more stops for this lead group, Rish.
Yeah, we should. After this stop, it should just be one more. So we're really getting down to it. And I think after that last stop is when you kind of start to, or even building up to that last stop is where you start to really, again, feel like it's crunch time as Maleska, Frenzoni, Coogan, the rest of these guys who are yet to pit, all making their way onto pit road, except for Sage Karam and Eric Macedo, both of which staying out for another couple of laps. Karam came in 2 laps after everybody else in the field, so he has a few more laps of fuel to burn, and Macedo has done a great job at saving as he pitted just about the same time as everybody else, still out there running up front. And now Frankenfield is going to see that benefit here. He's going to roll all the way to the front and by some good margin over the likes of Maleska and, of course, Van de Sant. I mean, there you see the gap. It's pretty much the entire length of the short chute, if not more. Frankenfield coming off of turn 2 as Van de Sant's going into turn 1. So that's the advantage there from that extra pace that Frankenfield had.
Rich, we talk about that pace. Put us back in that cockpit. Is this something where right out of the pitch you want to be aggressive? And how do you play this last pit stop right? Do you want to go as far as you can on this stint so you have the freshest tires when you get to those final 5 laps? How does this play out?
I think so. I think you're going to go long on this stint. And this is Chad Frankenfield being really smart. He knows where his strength is. He is one of the best drivers that we have in ultimate pace. A lot of times, though, he'll have issues with extending tire life and situations like that. So, hey, just go flat out here for whatever you can now. And he set himself up where he has a pretty wide window to make his final stop. So something to keep an eye out for. I do think he's going to move into a fuel-saving mode, potentially, if it doesn't look like we're going to get another caution. I think the way this works, though, for Chad is he's going to need that caution, but 8 seconds now ahead of the rest of the pack, and that's the advantage, right? He was, tenths of a second ahead of Van de Sant before he made his stop, and by undercutting by about 15 laps, gets himself 8.5.
Yeah, and Derek here is we're under 60 laps to go. Frankenfield, as Rich mentioned, 8.7 seconds ahead. But look at him. He's going to use that lap car in front of him to use that tow and possibly save as much fuel as possible.
Yes, he is. He's going to be as patient as possible as these laps tick down, as he wants to save as much fuel as possible. The way I've got it, my shorthand math, Tony and Rich, Chad would have to come in around lap 154, so probably here within the next 10 laps or so.
So, and again, with a couple yellows, as Rich mentioned, he went close to 37, 38 laps on that stint when there were 2 cautions. But Rich, as you know, 91% of this race is normally ran under green flag. I would imagine we're relatively, maybe a little bit under that number, but I would imagine that we are relatively close to that 91% number.
Yeah, if history is to go off of, then we could see a long green flag run here to the end. Kind of everybody got those nerves out of the way. They got some of the tight racing on restarts. And the thing is as well, when you stay under green, generally the field starts to spread out a bit more, though right here we're seeing this fantastic battle for seconds starting to shape up. And with that spread out field, just harder for guys to really run into each other, of course. So fewer chances for a caution, but we could still see something in the closing laps here. I would certainly not be surprised.
And one person loving this battle between second, third, and fourth, Van de Sant, Pinheiro, and Wilhite, is Chad Frankenfield. His lead up to 10 seconds now. A 10-second lead for Chad Frankenfield. And as you know, any tenths of a second and even a second could be huge in the strategy call as they battle it out for the second spot here. Chad Franklin now 10.3 seconds out ahead of the field as we approach now lap 145 in the books. 55 to go here in the Richmar Florist Indianapolis 500.
And as we see, Tony, Frankenfield is now in the pits, 9 laps short of what I thought his original pit strategy would be.
We'll see what happens here. So Van de Sant back to the lead. And again, let's remember that 10.3 seconds. That 10.3 seconds was the lead that Chad Frankenfield had when he came in on the only real strategy run and economy fuel run that we have saw. So that number 16 gold and white salute to the late 80s of Danny Sullivan. heads back onto a race course in which he will have all of the clean track he needs in front of him as we approach his 50 laps to go. Adriano Pinheiro running second all over the back of Alexander Van de Sant with Will Height in third. And now moving back into the fourth spot, our pole sitter Maleska right there in tow with Bennett fifth. Throw a blanket over the top five as they head down into turn 3.
Yeah, definitely things started to become, Tony, a little more dicier and edgy as we slowly tick towards that 200 lap mark. I think probably within the next, maybe 35 laps or so, the drivers in the top 5 are going to show exactly the hand that they're holding.
Yep, and Van de Sant leading. We'll see if, I believe, if not mistaken, the last time it was Adriano Pinheiro that came in to the pits first, and then the following lap, the rest of the field and the rest of that top 10 came to fruition and found themselves inside of pit road. So Chad Frankenfield is back in 22nd, so we'll keep an eye on that strategy. He is currently 22nd. He is pretty much running all by himself in that Little Eagle Racing number 15, running in the 22nd position. The biggest Philadelphia Eagles fan you will ever meet, and obviously the Eagles having one of the best seasons in their franchise history. So we'll see what Chad Frankenfield can do with this economy run as we are just 2 laps away from lap number 150 on a beautiful overcast day. The Indianapolis 500, the Richmar Florist Indianapolis 500, the 10th running of this race. As Rich, if you want to let us know one more time, maybe some of the points that are going in towards the end of this contest.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Adriano Pinheiro, if things stay the way they are, Pinheiro is not going to walk away from tonight's race with the championship, with Van de Sant outscoring him and closing that gap just a little bit. I think it's 80 points between the two of them coming into this. Obviously, that's a pretty extensive gap for Van de Sant still to be able to cover, but it's back-to-back double points races here with the 500 and the finale at WWT Raceway at Gateway. So, it's tough to say exactly. Obviously, Joshua Chin, this is the last thing he wants to see is his two rivals in the championship right now going at it for first and second on the racetrack with double points on the line. So, yeah, I think if Pinheiro's able to win this and something happens to Van de Sant, then we could absolutely see that championship crown. But I think you need something pretty significant to happen to take Van de Sant out of this race. And I think outside of the top 10 for Pinheiro to walk away with both 500 trophy, of course the Borg Warner trophy, as well as the Astor Cup.
So Van de Sant first, Pinheiro second, Will Height third, Maleska fourth, and Bennett fifth. Derek Maleska, a guy that led early, obviously your pole sitter, and he's just been sitting there patiently, quietly inside of that top 5, right where he needs to be with 50 laps to go.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. He has minded his own business for the majority of this race, keeping himself right there within striking distance in the top 5. Don't take your eye off him because, him being a past winner, seeking his third win here at IMS. So keep your eye on him as we have less than 50 laps to go.
Shout out to the driver running in 10th place. That's Rodrigo Franzoni. Missed the start of this race, started it from pit road. We knew he had a fast car starting third, but he has made his way up from the back of the field, running 33rd inside of the top 10. So hats off to Franzoni, taking that fast race car, staying patient. You never know, a yellow here or there, he can find himself inside of the top 5. Nonetheless, an impressive run to come from the back of the field after starting this race on pit road.
Yeah, absolutely. I think hats off to him. Coming in late, he was qualified, as you said, in the front row. Unfortunately, couldn't make it here on time. So he has worked his tail off, so to say, to get into the top 10. And I'm sure he's chomping at the bit to get up to P1 before the checkered flag drops.
So Rodrigo Franzoni inside of the top 10 as we get an overhead view here as Van de Sant and Pinheiro battling for the lead. Lap 153 into the books as they head down into turn number 1. Wilhite right there in third, ready to pounce with Maleska fourth, Bennett fifth, Musselman sixth, Sudik seventh, Andrus into the top 10. He's eighth, Murphy ninth, and Franzoni currently your top 10.
Yeah, Tony, as the laps tick away here at lap 153, Vandersant in the lead there, holding off points leader Adriano Pinero. If as Resh said, if things stay the way they are, Pinero is going to have to wait a couple more weeks there before he can wrap up the season title.
Absolutely. So we're getting down to the nitty-gritty with 154 laps into the book. Vandersant is your leader currently. But anything can change. A lot has changed. Rish, I don't know how much trending you have here, but we know that it'll ramp up at about lap 180 and that final 20-lap shootout.
Yeah, we'll wait for those final pit stops, I think, to play out, and that's when guys are going to start to feel the urgency for sure. I think potentially right now we may be seeing still late into this run, guys just starting to ride a little bit, making sure they're hitting their fuel numbers, making sure they have a window in case they need to, wait 1 or 2 laps to come down pit road, and then, of course, get ready to pull the trigger. Because once you make that final pit stop, the plan for most of them, I'm guessing, is going to be flat out until the checkered flag.
So it's a single file line down the backstretch, 155 laps in the books of the Richmar Florist Indianapolis 500. Want to shout out one more time our great sponsors, Mega Driver at Mega Driver 86, TA Services, Blue Egg Marketing, Brizzy Cam, Dark Horse Indy Series, Open Wheel Racing Jobs, and my website, birdoutsports.com. I had an awesome catch-up with Alexander Rossi earlier in the week. You can check that out on our website and on our Twitter pages. Also, had a cool wish list for the 2023 season for all drivers throughout the field as we gear up here for the final 100 miles of this contest. Rich, let's check back in on what's going on inside of the cockpit of Chad Frankenfield and where his lap times are compared to the leaders.
Yeah, Chad Frankenfield right now running significantly faster again, so half a second faster than what Alex Vandersant did on that last lap. So it's obviously a pace advantage that he has right now, but it's kind of you can't rely purely on pace here. He's 20 seconds behind our leaders. That's simply not going to be enough time to make it back to the front of the pack. I don't think you're going to be able to do half a second faster consistently. So it's kind of tough to know exactly the full game plan here for Chad Frankenfield because he has to pit at least one more time here, and it should just be the one more time now. But if he's on the same kind of cycle as everybody else, same number of pit stops left to make it to the end of this, I don't see how he's going to be able to make it back up front again without a fortunately timed caution.
Yeah, and so you're going to have to I'm going to take away that run of 38 laps because of a few of the caution laps. I think we're looking at 32 as the extreme most that you can go on a green flag run. So that means he's got to stay out here at least another 4 more laps, which I think he'll be able to do. But he may be able to go later in the stint than what everybody else can, and maybe that's his strategy to pick up the win.
Yeah, he'd be picking up probably maybe 3 or 4 seconds even on pit road with a short fuel stop as well if he doesn't have to take as much. So little bits gained here and there. It's just 20 seconds is a big chunk. If we were talking maybe 12 seconds behind the leaders at this point in the race, he's got a shot. I think it's going to be tough to go that full distance, but who knows? Frankenfield right now absolutely flying on the racetrack, and I think this is, again, what he does best is just go for it. Right now, that's his plan, it seems, just absolutely going for it while the rest of the field is concerned about fuel.
If he sticks to the 32 laps that Tony just suggested there, that puts him coming in at or around 176.
And I think that you want this stint right here to be the longer of the stint. There's obviously one more, and that comes after this pit stop. But you want this to be the longer run, right? Because right now you're out. There's nobody around you. There's nobody to battle with you. You're all by yourself. You can click down laps. And the later you can go on this run, the less amount of fuel you have to put in and spend on pit road, And the lighter your car may be towards the end of this one, and maybe even the fresher tires you will be. So the longer you can go on this stint, the more you help yourself out in the short run of that final stint of this 10th running of the Richmar Florist Indianapolis 500, as we have hit lap number 160. 100 miles remain in this one.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting to see the strategy that Frankenfield is on. We'll see here, I guess, in about 40 or so laps, if it pays off for him or not.
Back up towards the front, it's Alexander Van de Sant with the lead by about 0.3 of a second over Adriano Pinheiro. Those have been the two guys since really that first stint, right after that first round of pit stops, who have been the class of the field. But as you take a look at this race, throw that top 5 under a blanket. They're all nose to tail with each other as we head into turn 3.
Yeah, they are. And again, everybody in this group of cars is right now in it. You can even really include AJ Musselman, Nicholas Sudik. Hey, I mean, this field surprisingly close together as this run's continued on with how many green flag laps we've had here. It's been, about 60 or so green flag laps as Rodrigo Franzoni is going to add another position here inside the top 10, moves up to 9th. And so guys are still staying close together. We haven't seen too much field spread. So pretty much everybody's still really in this, those who are on the lead lap. I mean, you go back to Tate Lytle, who's 8 seconds behind Alex Van de Sant. That's probably the furthest back there. But, I mean, within 5 seconds, you've probably got the top 15 all within 5 seconds of each other. So it can swing so quickly for any of these drivers with the right strategy calls, with the right moves on and off of pit road. You have a good stop, you can gain a ton of spots here.
Maleska looking to the inside, the pole winner looking to crack back into the top 3 as Adriano Pinheiro looks for the lead as well into turn 1. Pinheiro gets a spot done. Molestic still side by side with Wilhite, but Adriano Pinheiro back to the point, and Van de Sant will look to the inside here in turn 2 and take the lead right back with just 37 laps to go. Van de Sant holds him up. He leads with Pinheiro second, Wilhite third, Maleska fourth, and Bennett sitting there ready to pounce in fifth.
Right now, Tony, do you think, does it look like Van der Sant has a little bit more muscle in that car than what Adriano Pinheiro does right now?
You know, with Van de Sant, he's shown and proven that he has a car that can stay up front. As now Wilhite looks to get a little bit racy, possibly 3 wide into 1. Pinheiro runs high, Van de Sant runs away a little bit, and Wilhite finds himself in that purple machine now second, but still side by side with Pinheiro. I'd be interested to see with Van de Sant, his car's been so good up front. How does it adjust if he does move back to that second or third position? As we're side by side into turn 3 again for that second spot. Pinheiro trying to hold off Chris Wilhite, who has Maleska in tow, and Bennett right there as well. Henry Bennett ready to try to take over and pounce, as well as Maleska looks for that third spot as they head down into turn number 1.
It's going to be interesting to see as you see the leaders there racing into turn number 1, what that lapped car, how does that lapped car affect the racing there in positions 1, 2, and 3?
Yeah, and that's always the key, and you just hope at this point, if that were to come about, there's a racing etiquette, what goes around comes around, and we'll see how that plays in. But Rish, here we are. It looks like they're proving to us lap 165 is, or really lap 163 is the time to ramp it up and go for it.
Yeah, it absolutely is here, and it's probably because you're starting to think here pretty soon of making your last pit stop of the night, as here goes Adriano Pinheiro into turn number 1. You kind of want to be first on and off of pit road. It prevents you from maybe being bottled up while you're trying to get down to pit lane speed. So that might be the advantage that Adriano's looking for right now. But lap 166 right now, within the next 2 or 3 laps, we should be expecting to see guys coming down pit road. That's when the window would open up to make it to the end without too much crazy fuel saving. If they can make it further than that, of course, you can take on less fuel. Or, of course, you can just choose to burn a lot more fuel over the course of this final run here. So expect to see guys making that dive onto pit road in the next couple of laps.
So we will see, indeed, as the leaders, Pinheiro, Van de Sant, swapping the lead back and forth. Van de Sant into turn number 1, takes over the lead. Wilhite runs third right behind Pinheiro. As Murphy finds himself now into the top 10. Franzoni up in the 9th as well. But Van de Sant leads this thing, and as we mentioned, Derek, not too far away from the final pit stop of the day for the leaders.
Yeah, that's going to be coming up here rather soon. So it's going to be crazy, I think, Tony, on pit road here when these cars come down, these leading cars come down for that final stop, as they like to say, for that money stop.
That money stop indeed, where you want to make sure your in and your out laps are as perfect as possible. Your in and out laps are fast as possible, and you find some of that clean air and some of that gap to be able to push forward in this one, as we are moments away from crowning a winner in the 10th running of the Richmar Florist Indianapolis 500. Approaching 30 laps to go. All right, boys, I know we did this right around the halfway mark, but who are some guys right now that you're watching for? Does anybody, Rish, have anything for Pinheiro or Van de Sant?
I think people do still. It's tough to know the mindset that everybody in this field has right now. We saw the push from Maleska as he was trying to get past Wilhite, and he wasn't able to. We see now Wilhite kind of joining this lead pack as he's gapped Robert Maleska just a little bit. I think anybody inside this top 5 or top 6 has a shot at this one. Track position's going to start playing in certain drivers' advantage here. Man, I'm not too sure. It does feel like Van de Sant and Pinheiro have been the class of the field. Once we get through the cycle of pit stops, I think we'll really know what guys' agendas are, whether they're trying to move forward or this is really all they've got.
And we shall see, as we, again, expecting pit stops to come here over the next several of laps. Expecting stops from the leaders. And that would be the final pit stop of the afternoon with 30 laps to go. Van de Sant has been the class of the field. He's led the most laps so far. Adriano Pinheiro has been in tow in second place in most of those laps. As we push forward here, again, just 30 laps to go. Pinheiro trying that high line again and looks to get Chris Wilhite in the mix as well as he looks for third. Quickly, let's take one more break here. No, let's not. Alexander Van de Sant into the pits, the leader, and his final pit stop down pit road for the final time. So Wilhite takes the lead after passing Pinheiro for second. That becomes the lead. They will have to pit here shortly too. But into the pits comes Alexander Van de Sant, your leader for the final time today, the final pit stop. And we have a car in the wall. We have a car in the wall down the back straightaway. Car hard into the wall. Let's see if this brings out a caution that can spice things up. Can't see who it is. That is Victor Del Porto. He shot off of turn number 2 and down hard into the back straightaway. He will spin it around, and this certainly, Rich, will have to bring out a caution.
He's able to stay off the racetrack, and that's the most critical thing here with iRacing. So actually, we're staying green, which is very fortunate for all these guys who are trying to get onto pit road. So Del Porto, some incident there off turn 2 or some problem, dives it down to the bottom. But the way iRacing calls cautions is only if there's a car blocking the racing surface. So Del Porto off that racing surface on the grass, it's safe for him to disconnect and nobody is going to be affected. So stays green for now, and I'm sure many drivers may be breathing a sigh of relief there.
Yeah, because that was, you talk about Van de Sant was already into the pits, and some of these drivers would have been hung out to dry, depending on when that yellow came out. So Maleska, your pole sitter, back up front, stretching out the field. We had a lockup there coming in on this pit stop. As Maleska takes over the lead, he still needs to pit, as well as Troiano, but as Frankenfield now, he will cruise through. Now remember, it was a 10.3 second gap in the last time out for Chad Frankenfield. But Rish, I don't know how this strategy will play out here with the last 25 laps. I'm not sure it's looking great for Chad Frankenfield.
Yeah, I think Frankenfield needed that caution to come out like right about now would have been nice. For him to be able to get back on strategy, get a free pit stop. But as things stand, that doesn't quite look like how it's going to play out here for the driving number 15 car. And he'll be able to run deeper into this race. He'll have that lead for a few more laps, or maybe not. He's actually going to come down pit road just like everybody else, get back on strategy. So it'll be a short stop. He'll maybe gain a little bit of track position, a little bit of time, but not quite what he was hoping for, I'm sure.
So Frankenfield cycled up to 5th. But he is in the pits alongside of everybody else inside of the top 5 besides Macedo. He finds himself in the lead, but Maleska is your current leader. But again, he still has to pit. And if you look down, it looks like this is all what happened to Alex Van de Sant, because Adriano Pinheiro finds himself with AJ Musselman right there. Well, if we could click on Alex Van de Sant, let's see what happened to the leader before this round of pit stops.
Oh, wow. Look, before we do that, though, here's Robert Maleska coming off of pit road as Chris Wilhite is now about to take over the effective lead. It's Wilhite, Maleska, Bennett, Pinheiro down in 7th. So the 2 leaders who were dominating those previous couple of stints now completely out of it. Pinheiro down the order. Alex Van de Sant just seems completely out of this race. We're going to see what the call is. It was speeding on pit road for Alex Van de Sant, and I think after that, he basically just parked the car.
So a rage quit from Alex Van de Sant with the Scott Dixon-like run today, dominating, leading the most laps, and on the final pit stop, finds himself speeding. Derek, you just hate to see that, and sometimes sometimes you're lucky, and sometimes you have some of the worst luck, and that worst luck is struck today for Alex Van de Sant.
Yeah, that's a great example there, Tony, of bad racing luck there. And if memory serves me correctly, this was around the same time that Dixon got his penalty this past 500. I think there was only a handful of laps left, and Dixon, I think he was 1 mile over the speed limit. So it was around this time back last May.
So Alex Van de Sant will not be your winner today, and that puts in the catbird seat right now, I believe running second. If I can go through and check this out, I believe running second, Chris Wilhite will indeed inherit the lead. Although Maleska is in the lead right now, and he is on the same strategy. So Maleska, the pole sitter, finds himself back up front, Rish.
Yeah, this has all worked out really well for Robert Maleska, and so now it's going to be a defensive-style drive from him, so he knows what to do now. He's led this race before. He's obviously won this race before, and he has the best track position, the best ability to do it. But what did I say around lap 70 or so, that with 25 laps to go, who's going to be in the top 3? Henry Bennett. Take a look at that green car right there, right now stalking Chris Wilhite. Great on and off of pit road on this that last stop. Do not count any of these 3 drivers out. It does, though, right now feel like a 3-man race, but Rodrigo Franzoni, another one of those guys who's driven up through the field, literally a pit lane start, and is now sitting 4th with a very real shot of winning this one. The lead is in sight for Rodrigo Franzoni. This would be a heroic effort if he's able to pull it off.
So, Derek, no pit stops from here on out. 23 laps to go. Franzoni right there. We knew he had a fast car, an unfortunate start, and he's found himself coming from the back of the field, took the green in 33rd, and now with just 23 laps to go, finds himself in range to maybe win this 10th running of the Indianapolis 500 for the Richmar Florist Indy 500.
Yeah, what a story this could be for Rodrigo, as he has worked his way, picked his way one by one through this field in the top 5 right now at P4. If things play out the way they do, and Robert hangs on, he's going to be a winner. But the biggest winner with Van der Sant parking it for the day, looking at points, is Adriano Pinheiro.
So Pinheiro finds himself running in 6th, which I think Rich will tell you that'll be a disappointing run if that's where the result is. But with 22 laps to go, Bennett right there, he's done it before. He's put himself in position before of these drivers inside of the top 5. Rich, in your opinion, who's the most aggressive to make one of those bold, daring moves heading into 1 or heading into 3 to win this thing?
Bold and daring, I'm going to say Rodrigo Franzoni. If he can get close to these guys up front, he's going to go for that move. We've seen it already tonight. He's had, again, almost an Alexander Rossi-esque race up to the front. I think, man, that must have been 2018 or 19. I think that he had that particular run where it was just purely raised by fury. You might be seeing that here from Franzoni here tonight. Man, I think you're going to see some smart racing from the top 3 as well. They all know the position they're in, what they've done to get to this point in the race, and they're going to be taking calculated risks here. Obviously, you need to pick up some of that, that safety factor that you've been running with all night if you want to get a shot at this win here. But With the same token, I think all of these three have gotten to this point because they haven't taken any significant risk.
So 20 laps to go. A 20-lap shootout, 180 laps in the books. 20 to go. Maleska, your leader. Wilhite is second. Bennett third. Franzoni fourth. Andrish with an impressive run today is fifth. Pinheiro has slidden back to sixth. The always consistent A.J. Musselman is seventh. Nick Sudik eighth. Ninth is Coogan. And 10th is Sage Karam. We always talk about trends. And towards the end of these races, Rish, sometimes we do see that yellow flag that can always spice things up.
Yeah, it absolutely can here. I don't know if we'd see anybody come down pit row, but it'll certainly pack this grid back up and give us some exciting racing to the end here. A reminder, though, for those folks watching at home who are maybe more familiar with our NASCAR series, there are no green-white checkers here in the Indy 500. We stopped this race at 500 laps, so if that means the caution comes out on lap 199, whoever's leading is in a great position, obviously, to walk away with that victory. So just something else to keep in mind. We will not be doing any green-white checker restarts to finish off this race.
We might have to go inside of the IndyCar race control for this and the Elite Racing race control. Any chance of a red flag if something were to come out around 195 or 196?
I think that's a question there for Dave. I don't know if the rule book has anything, Dave, if you know about that. Might not have him just yet.
Sorry, I was just confirming that the Alexander Van de Zandt issue was that his sim crashed during his pit stop.
Oh,
Technical
man.
issue. I was busy clearing. He used a bad word on the chat thing, so I had to clear it. So if you go.
You talk about some of the ultimate bad luck and some of the things that just happen when it comes to the technology and online racing. Leading on the final stop on lap 171, Alex Van de Zandt system goes down and will cost him a chance to win today's Richmar Florist Indianapolis 500. Damn is all I can say, Rich. That is very unfortunate.
That's a brutal hit to Alex Van de Zandt, and so late in the running too, to have those issues where it's you've done everything right and something completely out of your control takes you out of it. And I mean, that's just the nature of the beast that is this race, isn't it? I mean, so many times we've had drivers come so close and yet be so far from from that victory, and that's just painful there for Van de Zandt, especially how he's run these past couple of races, how close he's been on a number of occasions. We were talking about it before that issue took place, is that him and Pinheiro really did seem like the class of the field. Pinheiro got shuffled back. Who knows? It could have been Van de Zandt on his own leading up front without any kind of threat there from the 56 car. We really don't know, but unfortunate way to end the night there for Alex Van de Zandt.
Rish, we have about 16 laps to go. Explain to everyone at home, what the drivers are going through. They've been through almost 500 miles, 15 laps to go. What's the mindset of the driver, especially if you're leading the race at this point?
If you're leading the race, you're kind of in just a full-on go mode, I think, for the most part, especially without having to worry about fuel save. If you're Wilhite, you're Bennett, you're Franzoni, you're in a scheming phase of the race right now. 15 laps to go. You know that if you make a move on the front straightaway, there's a good chance, the guy's going to get back at you heading into turn number 3. So you got to just start thinking of, okay, how can I get past a driver and make sure that he doesn't find his way back past me? Maleska doing a good job, though, right now, just pulling a gap to Chris Wilhite in second, which is exactly what he needs to do. Wilhite needs to stay right there on the gearbox of Robert Maleska so that when that particular run comes, or he can at least be close enough to figure out where Maleska's weaknesses are on this racetrack and take advantage of those late in the race. The winning move, more often than not, is going to take place in the final 2 to 3 laps.
And Rish, I know you kind of just talked about this, but Maleska finds himself back up in the front where he hasn't been since probably that first 10 to 15 laps. But Wilhite and Bennett really don't know what they have in their race car as far as if they were to get clean air and take that lead. How much is that kind of going into the strategy where maybe your car isn't as great up front because you haven't been there all day, so you don't want to spend as much time in the lead, so maybe that's why you do that last lap pass and so you don't have to adjust your car too much for too long.
Absolutely. You do end up making some pretty big adjustments on your weight jacker, especially when you've got kind of the tight nature of running behind another driver to suddenly a very neutral nature of, being out in open air. So you've got to make sure you're very much on top of that so that you don't suddenly spin your car out and you have a ridiculously loose car. So definitely part of the consideration there. Of course, the last thing you want to be doing, though, is giving yourself too few opportunities to make that pass for the lead, because if that one that you had planned out doesn't quite work out, you want to make sure that you've got a backup as well.
Let's go on board with Chris Wilhite, your second-place runner. We'll take one more quick break and set ourselves up for a 10-lap shootout in the 10th running of the Richmar Florist Indianapolis 500. Tony Donahue, burnoutsports.com. Derek Vance from Push to Pass podcast. Rich Khosla, we're ready. 9 laps to go in the Richmar Florist Indianapolis 500, brought to you by Open Wheel Racing Jobs. Robert Maleska, your pole sitter, finds himself back up front. He's pushed the gap to over a half second over Chris Wilhite. Former winner Henry Bennett currently sits third. Franzoni is fourth. Remember, he started 33rd, shotgun on the field after missing the start. Andrish is fifth. Pinheiro sixth. AJ Musselman seventh. Sudik eighth. Coogan ninth. And Sage Karam runs 10th. 8 laps to go here. Maleska now trying to run away with this thing, Rich. He's built that gap to 0.6.
Yeah, this is incredible what we're seeing from Maleska, but lapped traffic right now that he's having to deal with. Don't quite know who that was that they're getting by, but that slowed him up in the short shoot just a little bit, but seems to have made it work all right there. Yeah, Chris Wilhite right now, 0.6 of a second behind Maleska with 7 to go. I mean, this is go time for Chris Wilhite. It does, when we were on board there, it looked like he's working the steering wheel a lot, so he's made that car as neutral as possible, and it just doesn't have the pace. More shockingly to me is that Henry Bennett as well doesn't seem to have the pace to match either. He needs to get by Chris Wilhite now if he wants a shot at this win. And as things stand, he's 1.5 seconds behind Robert Maleska with 7 to go. I don't know if he's still in it here. And for Maleska, it's almost kind of just cruising to the end here if he can, or at least just keeping up what he's doing right now.
The Maleska in a very familiar scheme out front of the Indianapolis 500 looks very similar to Marcus Ericsson's ride with 6 to go, though. Derek Wilhite closing in now, closes that gap just a little bit more.
Yeah, Wilhite is closing that gap ever so slightly. And we were talking off air. You guys had me convinced Henry Bennett may pull this off, but as you said, he's got to get behind. He's got to get around Chris Willhite, and I just think he's running out of time to do so.
It's a 2-car breakaway for the win in the 10th running of the Indianapolis 500. Your pole sitter, Robert Maleska, trying to hold off Chris Willhite. Half a second lead. It's a 2-car breakaway up front with 5 laps to go. Maleska leads, but here comes Willhite. He took a big chunk into that gap as we head into turn 1.
Tony, are we going to see the same thing we seen this past May at the Indianapolis 500, where it was a 2-car runaway between Marcus Ericsson and Pato Ward? We'll have to remain to be seen, but that's what it looks like we're going to get here.
Yeah, and we'll see when Willhite decides to make that move. Can you make it into turn 1 and hold off Maleska? Can you make that move in 3, pull it off heading into 4? And just hold him off down the front straightaway? He's going to have to get to him first. That's one thing. Getting around him is another thing, as that lead is gapped at right around 0.3, 0.3 of a second. But Willhite is right there in second place. But Maleska seems to be a little bit better down the straightaways.
Yeah, it looks like I think you're absolutely right. It looks like Willhite can kind of close the gap there a little bit in the corners. But as soon as they get on the corners, get back in the throttle into the straightaways, as you mentioned, that's where Robert's car kind of takes off like a rocket.
So Maleska gets a little bit further there. It's still right around 0.3, but he gains here down the straightaway, it looks like. And all he has to do, Rish, is get up into that slipstream, and he'll be able to get right behind Maleska. He brings that gap ever closer as they head into turn 2.
Yeah, you can kind of see Willhite strong entering 1 and 3. Maleska really good exiting 2 and 4, so that's playing to his benefit right now, but Willhite's starting to get the benefit of the slipstream as well. As he gets closer and closer, that advantage becomes bigger and bigger. The problem is we're approaching 2 to go, and it's still 0.4 of a second. You need to be tucked up on the gearbox here of this 8-car if you're Chris Willhite. You got to put everything you've got on the table right now to try and grab this away from Robert Maleska. That has to be your thought process. Chris Willhite in a great position to try and do something if he can just close that gap up by maybe 1 or 2 of a second.
2 laps, 5 miles remain. The gap pushes to 0.4 of a second as the drivers come off corner number 2. Our pole sitter, Robert Maleska, pushes deeper. He is now 0.4 of a second. Although Willhite still looks like he's right there. Can he close the gap? Yellow. We have a yellow flag. Yellow as they come to the white flag. This will wrap it up as Robert Maleska, the yellow and white flag will fly in front of him, and he will be your winner of the 10th running of the Richmar Florist Indianapolis 500. Rish, this one will end under yellow.
Wow, we talked about it there a little bit earlier, that's what would happen if we had this late race caution. It looked like Eric Macedo brought out that caution to end this one. Maleska, yeah, all he has to do here, line up behind the pace car, complete this half lap, and he will be a back-to-back Indy 500 champion. We've got a knack for going back-to-back in this INDYCAR Series. We've got 2 back-to-back championships these past 4 seasons, and now a back-to-back Indy 500 winner, and cannot fault him, despite the fact that this ended under caution. I mean, what a drive from Robert Maleska in that final stint, especially to pull away from Chris Willhite and not give him even an opportunity to sniff the lead towards the end of this race.
Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. Adriano Pinheiro has a tough pit stop, gets shuffled back. He was battling for the lead. Alex Van de Sant, I think, had the car to win. Something goes wrong on his system over the final pit stop. And off corner 4 for the second straight time, your winner of the 10th running of the Richmar Florist Indianapolis 500, brought to you by Open Wheel Racing Jobs in the number 8. Again, your pole sitter, Robert Maleska, the winner today at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And there it is, Robert Maleska, your winner. Derek, we'll get your thoughts here on that final stint and Maleska retaking the lead and driving it home for his second straight win.
Yeah, it seemed like when he got the lead, that car got out in clean air and was just dominant. Chris Willite could pull up to him, couldn't quite get close to his gearbox, couldn't quite get around him. Too strong of a car today for the number 8, and ironically, it's just something about Indianapolis and red cars, Tony, winning it.
Back-to-back times for Robert Molesca. Let's talk about that, Rich. This is an accomplishment that, as we know, is so hard to do, to win this thing once, let alone go back-to-back and drink that milk and celebrate in victory circle for a second straight year.
Yeah, what an incredible feat to get this job done. And the one thing we hear time and time again about this particular event and this series as a whole is the strength of field. These guys are so competitive, so quick, all of them. And well, it's time for Molesca to celebrate here on the front straightaway. To do this back-to-back, I mean, he's cemented himself very much in the history of this event. I mean, when you think about it, 10 races, he's won 2 of them. That's 20% success rate. Hey, watch those bricks there, Robert. Gotta respect the brickyard as he begins the celebratory donuts.
So, burn them down for your second straight win, Derek. Let's run down that top 10, buddy. There was some guys that really drove their way up towards the front here at the end.
Yes, there was, and can't wait to talk to Robert as he finishes his celebration. But a lot of names we talked about there. Chris Willite finished second. Henry Bennett, a lot of us had their eyes on him as a defending champion. He comes home third. Rodrigo Franzona. We talked about him coming all the way back, finishing top 5 at P4. Adriano Pinero, I think he's a big winner, especially when it comes to points at P5. AJ Musselman coming in at 7. Tony, run him down the rest.
Yeah, a great job there, Derek. Again, Musselman 7th, and Sudik 8th, Coogan 9th, Karam 10th. Rish, let's before we talk to our winner here, let's tip our cap to your 4th place runner, and Rodrigo Franzoni, starting 33rd. We knew he had a fast car. He stayed patient and finds himself with a top 5 finish.
Yeah, that's a spectacular run there by him, and certainly deserves mention. I mean, everybody in the top 5, I think, had really good races there. I'm waiting to get confirmation from race control. I do think Adriano Pinheiro may be crowned champion after this race, but we'll get to that in just a little bit. But I think right now we're going to bring in Robert Molesca, our Indy 500 champion. And so, Tony, here he is.
Robert, man, congratulations back to back. It seemed like you really bided your time. Patience was the key. You were around, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th throughout this race. Some other things happened in front of you, but you were there to capitalize. Your thoughts on going back to back in this Richmar Florist Indianapolis 500?
It just feels really good. Quite different race from last season when we ran here. Just massive fuel numbers. So that's why I'm going to say we were over half a second off pace for about 70 laps there, it seemed. All of us were just trying to hit the number. And I think I was doing the best out of anyone there. And I was able to make the fuel last and be able to go long that last stint. And the short fuel really helped out for me. Probably got me 2 spots there. I was looking at my pit times, and it saved me about just under a second on pit road. So, yeah, once that, just had to get the lead and just dominate from there.
Rich, go ahead.
Robert, man, congratulations, and just on the dominance that you've shown at this event over the past 2 seasons, from the victory to the pole this year to going back to back, man. I mean, what is it about this track this track and car combination that you just completely gel with?
I just really enjoy it. I mean, my kind of strength as a driver is just hot lapping, and I know once I get out front, I can do that. But I knew if I'm stuck in the back, I'm kind of not as great as, say, like Adriano or Alex or Chris there, as they were kind of when they were saving. But just kind of surprised I went back to back because Chad puts a great event together, and it's always a very strong field, one of the strongest that we have in the IndyCar. So Yeah, great win for me. Great second for Chris, and I think Henry got P3, so that's 2 power slides cars in top 3.
Yeah, go ahead and talk about some of the people that have supported your car today. Obviously, looks very similar to Marcus Erickson's, which we saw back in May in his
Yeah.
first car. But some of those partners and people that have helped you get to this point.
Yeah, what can I say? The red and white car, I guess, is pretty good luck here in 2022 in at Indy. But yeah, everyone in Turn 4 Discord, Chris Wilhite, AJ Mouseman, Nick Sudik, Alex Van de Sant. We just all worked really well together. And really, I mean, we were always communicating, always kind of comparing fuel numbers, which really, I think, got us all solid finishes, except, unfortunately, Alex had his disconnect there, which I think we were going to be probably 1-2 there at the end.
All right, sir. Congratulations. Back-to-back wins. Robert Molesca gets it done. Turn 4 disc car, the number 8 red and white car was up front most of the day. You're a pole sitter, and now back-to-back wins in the Richmar Florist Indianapolis 500. Congrats today, man, and enjoy it with the rest of the night.
Yep. Thank you, Tony. Have a good one.
All right, boys. Really good race this afternoon. Rich, we'll start with you. Some of the takeaways that you had.
Yeah, I mean, exceptional racing. I think it was obviously a track position race, but for the most part, I mean, guys were able to make moves when they needed to. Curious to talk here next to Chris Wilhite and see if he maybe had anything for Robert Molesca when we get to it. If we were going to finish this race under green, so we'll bring in Chris Wilhite now and see, did he really have anything there for our eventual race winner?
So Chris Wilhite with us. Chris, you were closing that gap. Seemed like he had a little bit more coming out of the corners. Anything more you could have done? Obviously, that yellow didn't really give you a chance to run towards the checkered.
Yeah, we were a little better in 3 and 4, I felt like, and we were giving it all we had there at the end. I don't think we would have gotten them, but man, it would have been fun to try. Yeah, the only thing we could have done different is maybe maybe we could have tried to hold them off right there after the pit stop, right, on the fresh tires, and maybe if I kept up front there, I could have kept the air. But at that point, he had lap pressure tires, a little bit of advantage. And then we kind of caught the lap cars there towards the end, about 10 to go. That gave him a little bit of a benefit for a few laps because he was getting the toe off the lapper, and that hurt us a little bit because we were starting to close in.
This is a driver that you know pretty well, who won today's race. Did you feel like you knew his tendencies? Or was it something that you were just waiting for that opportunity to get to him to try to make the move?
Yeah, it was really, I mean, this race was all about the strategy there. And once we kind of made our bed with the pit stop, what there was about a little past halfway, right? And at that point, it was who was saving, who was pushing. We were saving intentionally. The leader had to save big time. We could have passed them, but we wanted Alex or Adriano to run out of fuel. So, and at that point, Robert was behind me, and that was my main concern, to be honest. I felt like we would be able to get VDS and Adriano just on the pit stop strategy. I was really worried about Robert because he was kind of playing our strategy. He was hanging back there, saving his tires, saving his fuel, and I knew when it was go time, he was going to be the guy to beat.
Well, congratulations! Not the win that you wanted, but certainly a great run, finishing second. Go ahead and thank some of your partners and give some shout outs to the people that helped you come home with that runner-up finish.
Yeah, so we'll start with Richmar Florist at Mega Driver 86, Elite Racing League, Elite Racing Network, and Chad Frankenfield. This is the top-notch fixed Indy 500 on the first service, and it's not even close, and that's due to Chad. Man, I've got like 3 or 4 podiums here now. I just want to win. I want to win this one. Shout out to Highside Motorsports and my NASCAR owner, Lawrence Shaughnessy, was spotting for me and helped me with strategy. So thank you to him. Indy Alliance Racing. Shout out to those guys. AJ Musselman was here tonight. Looks like he came home 7th, so good run for him. Quick shout out to my buddies at Turn 4 Racing, which would be Robert. VDS has some problems. I hate to see that. Nick Sudik came home with the top 10, and Nick DeGroot. So big say hello to those guys and say hello to my parents that I know are watching out there tonight. So thank you for what you guys do. Appreciate the broadcast, and I'll be watching it back tomorrow.
Appreciate you joining us here after the race, and congratulations on your runner-up finish.
Thank you.
Rich Khosla, Derek Vance, Tony Donahue with you as we wrap up the night. I want to thank Dave Huck, our awesome producer of tonight's race. As always, a big shout to Chad Frankenfield for putting this together. Rich Mar Florist, Mega Driver 86 INDYCAR Series. A big thanks to everybody who supported this race tonight. Rich, we will start with you and then get to Derek. Just some of your thoughts on this race as we wrap it up here this evening.
Absolutely, and I hate to cut you off there, but we do still got to talk to Henry Bennett there, our third place finisher. At least got to finish out the podium. Want to bring him in here, and especially I feel like we always mention this whenever Henry's up in the booth, which whenever he races, it basically seems like it finishes that way, Henry. But I want to know, what time is it in England right now?
It's 35 past 3 in the morning.
Oh my gosh. That's the real endurance effort that's going on right there, man. It's great to have you back in the racing series though, and what an effort you put in tonight.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm surprised to get third, really, because I didn't have any practice laps. Like, I jumped into the race session warm up, and as soon as I got in the car, Chad said, "Oh, 3 minutes to go," and then everyone off track, and I was like, "Oh God." And like, there's all kinds of weird stuff happened to my controls and graphics because of the update that I didn't have time to test. So I was pretty weak at the start of the race, and my pit ins and pit outs were like really affected by the my choppy VR because of all the graphics stuff. But yeah, just luckily managed to find a gap in the field where I could get used to everything and bring myself into the race.
What are some other things that kind of went in today? It seemed like some of the other drivers mentioned fuel strategy, and the stints just kind of went different than what they were used to. Anything, Henry, as a former winner of this race and somebody who always runs so well, anything that caught you surprised over tonight's 500 miles?
I wouldn't say there's any surprises. As far as fuel is concerned, I think a lot of us up front always count backwards to lap 200. So we're always looking at whether we can save or not. So when there's a chance to save, it usually is the better strategy to save. Yeah, and it's so tough to pass as well that pit stops meant everything. So if you could save and go a couple of laps extra and go a bit faster on those couple of laps, then you could overcut. So that was what I was kind of hoping to do.
Well, we're going to let you get to sleep, although the adrenaline from this race may keep you up for a few more hours. Congratulations on the podium finish. Obviously not the win and not another victory here at the Rich Mar Florist Indianapolis 500, but nonetheless, a great run for you, man. Congratulations, and try to get some rest.
Oh, thanks, guys.
Rich, go ahead and give us your thoughts as another win here. Maleska back-to-back champion in the Rich Mar Florist Indianapolis 500.
Absolutely, yeah. Again, impressive race run by him. Kind of fell back. We talk about falling back. He was still inside the top 5 for pretty much the entirety of this race, but fell to that back half of the top 5 for a number of laps in the middle there. Great on and off of pit stop, and you know, we mentioned the money stop and how important that is. And at the most important pit stop of the race, he made it count. Came out in front of Wilhite and Bennett, and that very close blend that they had. And from then on, it was a defensive drive to the end of that one, and what a drive he put on. So fully deserved there, an incredible run, and I think we can pretty much. You've got some pretty incredible stories about everybody inside our top 5 there about the way their races shaped out. I do want to mention the man who did finish 5th. We did just get confirmation Adriano Pinheiro is, for the first time in his career, Mega Driver 86 INDYCAR Series champion. So shout out to Adriano and congratulations to him as well. What a season he's had. As crazy it is to say, this is his worst finish of the season, is 5th.
Derek from Push to Pass podcast, man. Let people know out there where they can find your work and give us your final thoughts here on this race.
Yeah, I think both of you have hit it directly, nail on the head there. Interesting strategies by all the drivers. It was, kind of unfortunate to see the way the strategy able to play out there for Frankenfield. Had a strong car, but for the second year in a row, the number 8 car finds itself in victory lane. I know Tony said it was tough to win this race once, but to do it back to back, what a phenomenal feat for that gentleman. And then the other two that ended up on the podium as well. As you said, push to pass. We may be going back live here in the next coming couple Thursdays or so. I know a lot, Tony's going on. You know that as well. So a lot to cover there. Also, too, like I mentioned, RC Enerson, who raced here this evening, is going to be joining us for season 2. Excited for that. And then a couple other nuances that we're going to have. You can always find Push to Pass on Facebook and Twitter Thursday nights around 9 p.m.
All right, for our great producer, Dave Hawk. And a big thank you to Chad Frankenfield, Rish, Khosla, and Derek Vance. I'm Tony Donahue. A big special shout out and congratulations to Adriano Pinheiro on winning the championship, and to Robert Molesca on his back-to-back Richmar Florist Indianapolis 500 victory. Don't forget to follow us on all of our social media channels. Thank you so much for spending your Friday night with us, and have a great holiday season.